I am going to call the meeting to order. I move that we open the meeting. May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Just to let everyone know, pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, dated June 16th, 2021, an act relative to extending certain COVID measures adopted during the state of emergency regarding suspending certain provision of the open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, the Town of Marshfield's Board of Selectmen's meeting and other selected board and committee meetings, including this Conservation Commission, will be conducted both in person and via remote participation. Members of the public may attend in person or participate remotely in a hybrid form of meeting. However, should the technology fail us and we lose the Zoom feed, the meeting will continue without the Zoom input. So, first order of business are the minutes of the 10/19/2021. Has every commissioner seen them?
Yes.
No additions, corrections, or comments? Okay, then I move that we vote to approve the 10/19/21 minutes as written. May I have a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
And the 11/2/21 minutes, we received no comments, corrections, or edits.
We actually got comments.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, from Eric and from Bert. And so I worked those in on page 2 and page 3.
Okay,
So they're as edited.
so I vote to approve I move that we vote to approve the November 2nd minutes as edited. May I have a second?
Second.
Joe?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We will move on to the business items. Business item 1 concerns 93 Old Colony Lane, Shoreline Aviation, the installation of a diesel above-ground storage tank. And we have Mr. William Finn and
Jeff Suveg, airport
Jeff
manager.
Suveg.
And Benjamin Garvin, assistant airport manager.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to explain this for us?
Good evening. I think you know who I am, but for the record, it's William Finn, William C. Finn Associates, Inc. I am a consultant for the Conservation Commission, and I am here on your behalf this evening. You have asked me to be a liaison to the Airport Commission and the airport personnel on the project from the airport, and that's why I'm here this evening. And during this evening's discussion, we'll be dealing with 3 different issues at the airport. So this is the first of the 3. It deals with the installation of an above-ground, 300-gallon above-ground diesel storage tank, double wall with an audible alarm in the existing containment area, which have right now the large aviation gas storage tanks in that same containment area. And the purpose of this project is to increase the safety associated with refueling vehicles at the airport, particularly vehicles like the Marshmaster that's used to mow the vegetation down there. Currently, right now, the operation uses 5-gallon tanks, and they refuel by hand. This is going to be like going to a gas station. They'll be refueling from this 300-gallon diesel storage tank. And it's contained in the large containment area, which also has the aviation fuel tanks in it. It'll be bolted down, and once it's bolted down, the bolts will be sealed, so there will be no leakage out of the containment area if anything happens. And there's absolutely no impact on the resource area at all because it's a concrete containment area. So we've given you the specifications for it. I think it should be in your package, I believe. And I think Bill Grafton added a figure from the other storage tank plans that demonstrates the boundaries of the resource areas, how far away they are from the containment area. So there's really no adverse impact to the resource area, and in my opinion, there's a beneficial impact by avoiding spills associated with the infilling equipment.
So
So
the
we are requesting that this be a de minimis determination on the matter.
just to augment what he's saying, we got the existing conditions from the original approved plans for SC 422784, which is the above-ground storage tank. Because the plan that we got, they quickly put it together and it didn't have the full suite of setbacks. I've talked to them, they're gonna have that in the future. They will speak to their consultants, so that'll be handled. This is de minimis, I don't see an issue.
A couple of other things I would like to add. I forgot to mention, this is a completely different project from the existing aviation fuel storage tanks. It is funded solely by Shoreline. The town has no funds in this. It's an improvement they're making on their own. There's no federal money associated with it, no state money associated with it. The design engineer is Highland Tank. It's a Highland Tank. They're a well-respected tank company. Its supplier is New England Petroleum, and the installer is Williams Energy. So it's a completely different set of circumstances from the other tank project. I think Bill wanted me to make that clear.
Yeah, I think that was important because we have these overlapping projects going on, and some people looking in, they're gonna say, what's going on in there? So clarity and transparency is much appreciated, so good job, everybody.
Do any commissioners have any questions or comments? Well, this is clearly a betterment and a much safer system. So I move that we vote to ratify the installation of the diesel above-ground storage tank at 93 Old Colony Road as a de minimis activity. May I have a second?
Susan?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Okay. Now we have 42 Wellington Avenue, which was a hazard tree removal. During our hurricane recently, a large tree fell between a double-stem tree and split it down the middle. It is threatening both the neighbors and this property. It is within the buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland only, approximately 50 feet away. Is there anyone here to discuss this, or? Okay. I move that we vote to ratify a de minimis activity for the removal of a hazardous tree at 42 Wellington Avenue. May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair, and just on both those, they had special conditions. I just want to point that out. And on the airport, they need to provide evidence of all permits that they'll be getting and obtaining for the said tanks. Otherwise, its special conditions are.
Thank you, my
normalized.
papers got wet and they're, I'm losing some
Call me
writing.
when that happens. We'll print you a new copy.
Okay.
So who seconded that? I fell behind on that.
Susan?
I think it was Joe.
Oh, it was
Joe.
Joe. Okay,
Joe,
sorry.
All right.
Okay, if I need it, I'll let you know.
Susan can't have them all, right? Right.
All right, business item 2, approval of Conservation Commission meeting schedule from January to June 2020. We propose to continue meeting the first and third Tuesdays of each month at 6:30 p.m. Do you want to display the schedule, or is that necessary, or just?
Somebody help for the people that
If you want, I
know.
can, yeah.
If I take 10 seconds and
Yeah.
can't hurt, and it's on the record, we do our part.
In the meantime, I move that we vote to approve the Conservation Commission meeting schedule for the first half of 2022. Second?
You generally good with, just one quick question.
Yep.
You generally good with 6:30, Joe? I can generally make it provided I don't have a late case. So, yeah,
Fine.
Thank you, yeah. Okay, so,
thank you.
may I have a second?
Second,
Joe,
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
good work, Liz, here, right?
Okay. Business item B3. We had an encroachment on town-owned conservation land at 7 Lady Slipper Lane. This parcel was recently sold. This has been an ongoing encroachment. It goes back a number of years, earlier than 2017. There was a pool house and pool fencing encroaching on town conservation land. We are not sure who advanced the restoration activity, but in October 2021, Town Council advised Conservation Administrator Grafton that his information indicates that all issues have been resolved. So, do you have anything to add to that, Bill?
No, I
or-
just think we might want to have a hand in this going forward with all encroachments. It's on conservation land. Some kind of process and coordination would be a good idea. Encroachment, just like other enforcement, will have to have a hearing officer, so we won't lose track of this going forward. This one we've adopted, and it sounds like some of the work got done, but we didn't get to go out and check it necessarily. We'll take the people that took the lead on this. Their net benefit is we got some or all of it done.
Was there ever an enforcement order, Bill?
This is an encroachment on town-owned land, so it's different. Enforcement orders only happen when you have conservation jurisdictional boundaries. On this one, it's solely it's an encroachment or a trespass or that kind.
So there were no conditions attached with this?
No.
It just need to get resolved?
Right, and Bob started writing letters in 2017 after he and I met with the owner and his lawyer, and the net action came out when they were going to sell the house. So it's an interesting dynamic and lesson learned for us on dealing more with these encroachments, because we can become more effective with better tactics.
Any other questions, comments?
No.
Hearing none, I move that we vote to close out this encroachment based on town council's feedback. May I have a second?
Second.
Second, Susan.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. On to item B4, which is 226 Bay Avenue, a de minimis activity versus a request for amended orders of conditions. And we have appearing before us,
My name's Kevin Sullivan. Good evening.
good evening,
This is my mother,
Mrs. Sullivan.
Kathy Sullivan.
Nice
her-
to meet
her
you.
home. And this is Jeremiah.
Mr. Eck, the architect, okay?
Take this, Jeremiah.
Yeah, you want another chair? Here's a chair.
So just by way of background, if I may, we were before this board back in May, but this commission back in May, and you unanimously, the scope of this project is essentially enclosing the first floor porch into living space for my mother. She's going to make the house her primary residence. I live across the street at 229 Bay Ave, and some upstairs work to bathrooms and kitchen as well. The scope of work was approved unanimously by this commission back in May. We have not proposed any addition or any change to the scope of work that was approved. The project also received unanimous approval by the ZBA for a special permit for non-conforming structure at a week before the hearing with this body. As a result, the only thing that's changed in the meantime is that we filed for a building permit, and as a result of building costs through COVID and some other correspondence back and forth with the building inspector, Andrew Stewart, who I did ask to join. I think I saw his name on
I
the
saw him
I
up
did
there.
too.
on the
Yeah, I saw
on
Steve
the Zoom
Wilds,
call.
too,
I
yeah.
spoke with him today, and I've had several conversations with Bill about this as well. This is a classic case where I think at the time this commission approved the project, sorry for what it was, which is a relatively insubstantial addition to the house to enclose some space. There's no work that's being performed anywhere outside of the existing footprint of the house, and we were basically replacing some existing piles by driving new piles into that space, not proposing to change anything else on the property underneath the house. The building, the floodplain requirements that came up in our conversations with Andrew require that some additional fill be brought into the underside of the house. There's a historical garage. There's always been an underneath garage to this house, and Andrew informed us that the level of that, which is at times maybe 8 to 9 feet high in some places and 6 feet in other places, be brought up to grade. So we basically need to fill and lose the garage area. We weren't happy about that because that's where the bikes and the ladders and things get stored. But in order to move ahead with the project, we agreed to do that. We're here for that reason, primarily we agreed to bring the fill in some sand. We see it as additional mitigation above and beyond which was originally required by this commission and agreed to by us as part of the project. Again, there's no scope of work change other than that. So that's the request for the de minimis activity. In addition, because the cost of the work exceeds 50% of the value of the structure, that triggers a building code analysis of substantial improvement, which then, from a building code perspective, requires the rest of the structure be brought to code. The request by Andrew Stewart to the board asks whether that also applies under the Concom regulations with respect specifically to the foundations in coastal dune areas, and I would request here that, given that the same standard does not apply from building code to conservation regulations, there's no price target that you guys are required to adhere to. It's really a question of whether or not the project is substantial from a conservation perspective and what the impact on the resource area is. And I would suggest that, particularly given the fact that we're bringing in this additional sand to improve the performance and function of this resource area in the coastal dune, that there be an exception given in this case from that particular performance standard, which would, if it weren't approved, would I suppose essentially require that the entire house be raised, removed from the site, all of the existing footings demolished and removed, and probably 45 to 50 new piles be driven into the coastal dune, and then the house put back in its place. It seems excessively more impactful to the resource area than simply bringing the existing condition up to grade and allowing it to remain as is. And so I know that your regulations allow for you to grant exceptions at your discretion for projects that are not deemed to have to be substantial from a conservation perspective, and I would ask that that be granted here. That would allow then Andrew to issue the building permit, which I gather he is otherwise ready to do, but needs your confirmation that that standard does not apply here.
Well, I believe our definition of substantial is largely the same as the building commissioners. It's 50%. So if Andrew has determined that it is substantial, I'm not sure that we have we don't have a separate definition per se.
I would agree, based on anything I've heard. We've always gone to the building commissioner for
It's the
for his determination.
50% of the assessed value.
And that's irrespective of whether or not it is substantial from a conservation perspective? I mean, I didn't see that definition in your regs. I mean, you might use that as a guiding principle, but I would suggest you that in this particular case, where we received unanimous approval back in May for the project and then filed for a building permit, the only thing that's changed in the project is that we are improving the resource area by the introduction of this additional sand and fill, that it seems counterintuitive that we would be required to then do additional work beyond what was required for the original proposed project.
When this came before us, I think I can speak for everyone, I don't think we considered that this would be deemed substantial by the building commissioner, because we do take that into consideration when we look at this. And frankly, I was surprised that it was substantial. Andrew up there, or,
Andrew said he was most likely not going to be able to chime in
okay.
unless we requested him, but he did provide comments if you want me to relay those.
Would you?
Yeah, so he spoke with Eric Carlson and Rebecca Haney today regarding the building code requirement to use open pilings without footings in a coastal dune
And just
environment.
to clarify, those are people at Coastal Zone Management, CZM.
And essentially, the feedback he got from them is since we issued an order of conditions that delineate the area as a coastal dune and deemed the values protected by the Wetlands Protection Act to be significant in this case, that according to the building code, he has to enforce the open piles without footings. So it would require either overturning the decision that it is coastal dune, which would require a soil survey, or it would require changing the scope of work so that it is not substantial. Otherwise, our hands are slightly tied in terms of what we can do, and his are equally tied.
There's a little more to it. So I talked to Rebecca Haney, if I'm okay to go ahead. And just to augment this, she basically said that, even a variance would have to go through at the state level, which is a very difficult thing to get. And I think Eric and I and Rebecca and everybody else would agree, even some of the members here, doing the soil study is just going to produce sand. It's a dune, it's Barrier Beach, so why bother? So that's not going to be something that's substantive. So it looks like, because you have two scenarios going on here, prior to the revised regs on March 18th, we didn't have the language we have right now, the 307.2. So the substantial was a pure thing. Go to the building department, get a declaration from them, and then you had that, and they had it figured out. Now we have the 307.2, and it says substantially reconstructed, structured, and reconfigured. I discussed that a bit with Rebecca Haney, and I said we're probably going to be in a position the commission has to normalize that and get a position where that is going to be a useful, purposeful tool going forward. So the source of it, that language comes directly from Duxbury, and the definition for that is still out there. So it's from Duxbury, we have it, and it's something that the commission, which has the discretionary authority to manage all of this information and make a determination, has at their disposal. So if we didn't have the new regs, you'd be looking at Andrew's declaration that, or determination, that would be a better term, that it's substantial, and there would be no debate. But now you have substantial reconfiguration and restructure. But to me, from my purpose, it seems to me that because it's substantial in and of itself, that would drive a decision by the commission to have it go up on piles as per the requirements or open columns. It seems like that is appropriate, especially after seeing, and I think you saw it too as well, everybody saw the write-up from Andrew that once there's an order of conditions placed, once it's been declared to be Barrier Beach Coastal Dune, the building code ossifies and basically it's in fixed position. They don't have as much flexibility. So that's kind of where it is. So it came down to some of the things we discussed. It's the value of the project versus the house. And there are other avenues to seek, and one of them would be to reassess the house. That's one option. That would be something you'd have to take up with the building department. And the other option is reduce scope. You'd have to take that up as well with the building department. And that might change the whole flavor of this. So I'm cautioning the commission to not be in a fixed position, but currently right now you're going to have to require it to go up on piles. However, the conditions may change if they applicants decide to change, and then they might be back to non-substantial. Depends on the outcome of any future activity. So those have to be considered. Sorry to give you the big picture. That's it.
So I hear they have some options. I also, the original de minimis request was about breaking up the concrete slab and filling with sand. From my standpoint, I would consider that de minimis. It's an improvement. So on that part of it, I would be satisfied to move forward. Other commissioners?
Yeah, I agree
Yeah,
that,
part of it, yeah.
that is de minimis, in my opinion. The option and I don't know how realistic this is, would be to try to make this non-substantial.
I understand, and we've looked at that, and so here's the practical reality is that the scope of the work that we're proposing to do on a dollar basis relative to the current assessed value of the home, we can always reappraise it, and you can try to get that number up and try to get the cost of the work down. But the direction that the Conservation Commission would be suggesting that we go would result in effectively all of this work being done over a longer period of time, filing for successive building permits over the course of, you need to have more than 1 year go by. So all of this work gets done, and there is no mitigation done. None of the fill gets brought in because none of the substantial triggers are met. So if you take a step back, I understand the focus on the
I'm
regulations.
hearing what you're saying.
Bill, you and I have talked about this, but so we're clear, the direction that you're suggesting that I go in is to sequence this work by increasing the cost of the house and reducing the cost of the work. Keep the existing below-grade garage area in its current, diminished function, as it were, from a resource area. I'm not going to bring the fill in, because the only reason I would bring the fill in is because I would be required to if I hit a substantial trigger. So I just present this as an opportunity to the board in this particular case, where you have the discretion, which is not tied to the building. The Marshfield Wetlands Protection Regulations does not require an interpretation of the substantial. It doesn't say substantial improvement as defined in the building code. It gives you the discretion to determine what is substantial. And there is no reference in that. It might be the practice of the board to do that, but I would suggest to you that in this particular case, there's an opportunity to increase the performance of this area in the coastal dune by bringing in roughly 39 yards of sand, which I'm willing to do, and increase the performance of the area. The alternative is that all of this work likely gets done anyway, whether it be over 1 year or 2 years, and there is no mitigation activity done. And I just function under the existing permits and approvals on a reduced scope of work. It doesn't seem like, in this case, the application of the board's regs is achieving the goal that you're trying to get to, where you have an opportunity here to do better. But that's not, again, because that's my only option. I'm not the cost of raising this house and driving 50 new piles in and going back to Concom for a new NOI and going back to the ZBA and redoing a permitting process that was done 6 months ago. It's not going to happen. That's not the direction that this project will go in. The work will get done at a 49% dollar value, working with Andrew, and the garage will stay exactly the same way it's been for 120 years. I don't say that as a threat. I said that's the practical reality of what's going to happen here. And Bill and I have talked about this.
Yeah, no, that part, that's kind of fresh, Kevin, this to be on the, so I thought, and I may be wrong, that the de minimis activity for the garage fill was to bring it into FEMA conformance in general, not necessarily to deal with the substantial. The pilings were the substantial component, and you needed to come into FEMA regulations. I thought that was the scenario, and if that's the scenario,
Yeah,
then
my understanding is different.
it could be, but I don't know if you can respond or not. But I think we should help you out by giving you the de minimis, and then if the work is not done, hopefully the commission will allow the de minimis. Sorry for stepping.
I'll
So
certainly take it if you're offering it, but I just.
So the thing
I'm
is,
not
it'll
sure
have
it's gonna-
special conditions, such as remove the hardened surface underneath. That would be the preferred course, and then to bring in clean compatible sand that's compatible with 505 306.4, use of compatible fill required. So you'd want clean, compatible, that's compatible with the natural beach dune, not the altered stuff that's around. So that would be what you'd be looking to get from the de minimis. And I think the de minimis is a standalone, but I haven't had that chat with Andrew. It seems like it makes sense because that's a FEMA-driven item, and the other items are substantial-driven.
But I think,
That's
Bill,
my
that there
understanding.
has to be some trigger for that. And you and I have talked about this, and
I can chime in.
great, Andrew, hi.
So the fill is also a trigger from the substantial improvement bill, correct? You're right, Kevin. So that's a trigger from substantial improvement. Once it's deemed substantial improvement, it has to be.
Andrew, we lost you there.
Andrew, you're gone.
So what he said was the fill was a trigger from the substantial, so
Which means that
it's not a standalone item,
Yeah.
it's coalesced until he gets back, I guess
Which
that's what
means
he's trying to
it
say.
won't happen.
Yeah.
Effectively. I mean, I'll
Okay.
take the
Well, we need
approval
that
to leave
information.
that avenue open if you're willing to deem it de minimis, but as a heads up, with the way that this is likely going to go, is all the work will get done over some period of time, and the opportunity to mitigate and bring in 39 yards or 40 yards or whatever it is to fill into this area and sand to improve the resource area won't happen. I'm not going to reopen the permitting on this.
Could I also ask a question? Would that be appropriate? I'd like to back up to, it strikes me that the lacking any definition anywhere that I could find of open pile type foundation, at least from my perspective, would mean that there are various examples of an open pile type foundation. And I think I left with Eric earlier, a few days ago, some pictures of what's actually underneath the house. And it strikes me that that condition, which is made up of some concrete block walls, some lally column, etc., would fall under that definition, number one. Number two, that the floodplain regulations actually do, if I might say, allow for footings, which we admit are there because as long as they're on undisturbed or unerodable soil. Now, that house was renovated in 1987, not that long ago. And at the time, I assume it was inspected by everyone, and the footings that are there now sit on undisturbed soil. So it seems...
That
it
picture
seems-
is taken essentially, if you were to drive, we don't use it for a car, it's all sand, you can see, but if you were to drive down, that's what you can look around in every direction and see essentially through piles
Do you have a picture
all
of
the way through to the
there?
skirting of the porch. So I think in this particular circumstance, you have a condition which largely complies with your
That's looking
regulations.
the other way.
Right, largely complies with, that's looking to the left as you come down the driveway. It largely complies with your regulations anyway, so it's not a substantial deviation or significant variance. It's essentially a condition that I think would arguably satisfy your regs, and I'm offering to provide, well, I'm willing to comply with Andrew's requirement to provide, the additional sand and fill to fill this area and bring it to grade.
I would just want to finish my point just briefly. So what I was saying is that indeed there are footings there, but I believe under your exception of the coastal dune, they are allowed if the soil is firm enough. Because the whole purpose of not wanting footings, I would think, is not to have scouring and water washing underneath and all that. But that house has not moved in 40 years. It hasn't moved an inch. So it's on firm footing. We are going to install new piles where the addition is, new wood piles. But we're arguing to leave, why take down, as Kevin is saying, why take down what's already sufficient, isn't really impacting the environment. The wind can blow through, the sand can blow through there, as you can see.
And it will be much more in the final rendition, if you look out that way, that's currently a plywood skirt that runs around the entire side of the house down to the sand. In the final scenario, it will be lateral slats that will allow for light and air and water to come through. So in all events, the improved condition of this area will be significantly more beneficial, particularly now with the introduction of fill, if that were to happen, and you were allowed the project to go forward. It's an unfortunate scenario where we got caught between, we were basically approved, we never changed the scope of the work, we go to the building permit process, and as a
No,
result of that, we get whipsawed back to
Yeah.
a
No, I
much more
understand.
substantial project,
You're-
and I'm trying to just navigate through it.
Bill, explain again your statement that any change would need to go to DEP anyway?
The variance part?
Yes.
So this one's kind of complicated because from what they told me, because there's an order of conditions declaring it to be Barrier Beach Coastal Dune done, because it's substantial and it's well founded by the building commissioner. It's associated with those two scenarios. They're required to find it to be, to need to go up on piles. So therefore, it would be a deviation, a variance that would have to go up at the state level. And it goes out of the hands of the Conservation Commission. I didn't know that, but that's what was explained to me.
Well,
by
I think
Rebecca.
that's if, I think that what you're referencing is that Andrew can't grant a variance from the floodplain requirements without approval at the state level. That's a building code variance. That's not what I'm seeking here.
Yeah, okay.
What I'm looking to do here is to allow Andrew to issue the building permit. And the way that he can do that is if you grant an exception, which you have the discretion to do under section 505-103.4 of your regs. You have the discretion to grant an exception at the discretion of the commission or the conservation administrator for maintaining, repairing, and replacing, but not substantially changing or enlarging an existing and lawfully located structure. And what I would suggest to you is in this circumstance, this is not a substantial enlargement or change in a project. This is an existing project that has previously been approved by this board unanimously. And we are not proposing any changes except to the extent that they improve the function of the area. And you can grant exceptions from those requirements. Specifically, what Andrew's asking for is an exception from the foundation requirements set forth in 505-307.2. And if you were to grant an exception to that based on the fact that the existing condition largely complies with your existing requirements and that in conjunction with the introduction of this additional fill, the ultimate scenario will be far better for the resource area, he's able to issue the building permit.
Andrew wants to talk, but I wanted to say one thing real quick. We also have special conditions which become the orders of conditions which get recorded, which are the commission's statement that's augmenting the regulations. It becomes the product, the permit. And it says special condition A, if there's anything that changes, anything, then you have to return for written determination by the commission. So you don't have to go down the pathway of exemption or variance. You can look at the performance standards as per the requirements as well. So those are also variables that have to be brought into bear for all commissioners. And in coastal dune, nothing can have any impact that will prevent the migration of the sand or the flow of the water. And so you would be in a betterment position here. And so some would argue that that's the way you have to be. And if it's substantial, everything's supposed to go and become compliant. The building commissioner is weighed in. That seems to me very clear there. And the exemption and exception has to be rare and unusual. I don't think this is the case you can do it. There's nowhere to mitigate in order to offset it except to go with an open pile foundation style. If this is the way the project's going to go and it stays substantial. If it dehinges from substantial, then that might return to where it is right now.
Do we have Andrew?
Andrew wanted to talk. Yeah, he's driving, so can we let Andrew
Yeah,
talk?
he can unmute. Andrew, go ahead.
Hi. Sorry, hang on just a second. Yeah, I just wanted to address a couple of points. So the substantial improvement, I don't remember exactly what the current assessment of the house was, but the proposed cost of the project was more than double the current assessed value of the house, and you have to be 50% of the thing. So we're far over, the scope was far over substantial improvement. It wasn't even like close. So once the Conservation Commission has determined that this is a coastal dune, once that determination is made, if it's a substantial improvement, all aspects of the house have to be brought up to floodplain standards for coastal dune. That includes open pilings with no footings. The language for open pilings refers to the building code in DEP's language. That's why they have the language for open pilings, is essentially to refer back to the building code standards for coastal dunes. And those standards are open pilings with no footings. So that's where that all comes from, is it all comes from the building code. Now, like I said, this is in an AE zone. The only way the current project, as it's proposed, could happen is if the Conservation Commission did not delineate this as a coastal dune. And that, like Bill explained earlier, the process for that is going to be very, very difficult to overcome because, as we all know, it's a very sandy area. You've got dune right out in the backyard, and it's going to be difficult to prove that it's not a coastal dune. So, like you said, really the only way to get this done is to piecemeal it, you know, and obviously that's not the direction we all want to go for floodplain, you know, protection and management, because we would like to have it all properly mitigated and brought up to current codes and compliant, right? But I understand your situation, and, you know, people do it, you know, all the time, is to wait the year and go through that whole process. But I also will caution you, and I know I've done this in our phone conversations, is that we plan to introduce a bylaw in the spring that will change that determination to include any projects that have happened within a 5-year period, not just a 1 year.
Andrew, just to add one point to what you just mentioned, you said the only way this could happen is if it were delineated to not be a coastal dune. I think there's one other way, which is the way that I've been suggesting tonight, which is that the board confirm that foundation requirement in this particular case, that performance standard does not apply.
But that wouldn't release you from the building code requirement.
It would release you from having to comply with the coastal dune foundation requirement, because they would say that it doesn't. That's what your email said. Unless I'm missing something, your suggestion was that there were two options. One would be that the coastal dune. One would be that the board determined that it was no longer, the commission determined that it was not a coastal dune, and the other is that they give you an exception from the Barrier Beach coastal dune performance standards. That's in your email of November 10th.
Yeah, and that was what I was.
Which is what I've been asking.
Understanding at that time, and I was corrected from the state, from Eric Carlson from the Department of Conservation and Recreation, and Rebecca Haney from the Coastal Zone Management.
Okay. I guess it's not that surprising. One more moving of the goalposts.
The goalposts actually were set, you know, years ago when the code was written. It's just managing all these different layers of, you know, regulations and trying to understand how they work together.
Andrew, can I ask again, though, why are not, the footings are allowed under the exception? I'm not sure why people keep saying no footings, absolutely.
Look, and I think we've been clear on how that exception works. You have to get a soil survey. You have to prove that the soil is non-erodible soil and that it's incompatible or not suitable for driven piles.
So if we were to dig down next to one of the existing footings in a significant fashion so that everybody could see what's underneath those, and prove that that soil is non-erodible and or would that be sufficient to prove that the existing footings are in fact allowed under the exception? Because that's what the exception says, you know.
Yeah, it says it's for surface or subsurface conditions, soil conditions, or non-erodible soil and non-suitable for this type of foundation, then a spread or mat type of footing can be used.
Yeah, and it
so you have to prove that condition.
Okay,
and that can only be done by, you know, like a civil engineer with a soil survey, like a geotechnical soil survey.
They do sieve tests, and then they also, the state's got standards. We just had Rebecca Haney in here, and she referenced it. So there's a methodology. This has been done in the past by Warren Harrington. We've had one done that Andrew shared with you. I think the commission will have its own expectations, because if you go to one favorable location and you find the soils that make your case, that doesn't mean the average will bear that out. So we have to keep that.
I get all that, but come on. The house has been there for 35, 40 years. It hasn't moved an inch. The footings are in solid ground. At some point in time, there has to be some common sense, I think, about what in fact is there, what will support the house, and we are doing everything per your request on the new foundation. So I'm just.
So typically,
Can I make one more comment about this, and then I have to go because I have to get back to my family. But you know, I understand that feeling, and I encounter that daily with a lot of residents in Marshfield. And I've also seen what happens after these large flood events. When I volunteered down in the 9th Ward in St. Bernard's Parish after Katrina and in Brick, New Jersey after Sandy. And I heard a lot of the same things that I hear from you guys and from a lot of the residents in town, that, you know, we've never had damage, we've never had water, it's never flooded in 100 years, all the same arguments, right? But what I heard from those people in those areas was, we'd never had this happen until now. We'd never realized this could happen until now. We never realized how devastating this could be until now. And that's what we're trying to prevent. And that's why the codes are there. And I hope you can appreciate that aspect of it, that there's a lot for hindsight in these types of situations. And if you want, ultimately I think that you can either go through the local channels and do the soil survey and try to get delineation change that way, or the real way to go through it all is to appeal through the state DEP or the BVRS.
Real way to do it is to reduce the scope of work and do no
exceptions to the
mitigation.
building
That's the way to do it. That's what I'm being directed to do, unfortunately.
Well, I think the Concom says that's coastal dune.
Yeah.
And that if you want to bring a soil scientist in and do the surveys, I will tell you that we also have the right to require a third party of our choice to verify that work at your expense. But we don't have wiggle room here. Does anybody see any alternative? I don't.
The alternative that I see is essentially winding up with where we are. If we tried to do a waiver or some other exemption, we already know from listening to CZM, the state, that they're going to kick it back. So we're going to try it, then they're going to kick it back, and you'll be in the same spot that you are now. It doesn't make sense for us to disrespect you, kicking this ball down the street a little bit more, for you to spend more money to get to that point to wind up back here. Unfortunately, it doesn't make sense to me. Living in that area, you are much better off filling that foundation, whether you want to agree to it or not. In 2 years, let's say you're done and your house hasn't been backfilled, you are much better off filling that so you don't have the scouring. My family has owned my house for 100 years, and I know all of my neighbors have said, it never happens. My grandmother marked on the side of the house where the water is. You know my grandmother. And the water a couple of years ago was, I think it was 15 inches higher than it was before. It's happening. That's the best I can say for you. I don't like the outcome. We know where we're going to wind up.
I don't either. I don't like the process, frankly. It's too bad. This was 6 months ago that this was approved, and now we're here. I'm worse off today than I was 7 months ago when we applied. That's the problem. And that's a problem that I've talked about with Andrew, I've talked about with Bill. This is not a concurrent permitting system. This is a whipsaw. This is get approval, go get a building permit, and get kicked back for a significantly larger project 6 to 7 months later.
Well, did you put in, I don't want to prolong this any longer,
Yeah.
but did you go for your building permit as soon as you were in front of us?
We got the approvals, finalized the construction drawings, and applied for the building permit. It took some number of months to do that. It was a normal process, I would describe it as. We applied for the building permit roughly, or exactly, 60 days ago.
So
It was in September.
We started together around November 1st, and by the 16th, at least you have all of us together trying to
Yeah.
coordinate.
Yeah,
So,
I hear you.
We're trying to, when we can, we're going to capture and try to do this. You may not get the outcome you're looking for, I'm sorry, but the performance standards lock us sometimes, and that's what's going on.
I wish we could come to a different resolution.
Before we leave, can we at least get a vote on the de minimis activity on the
right.
fill?
Yes,
That would be a great idea.
excellent idea.
So the two things with this was, I think it's preferred to get the concrete out, preferred, and it definitely has to be clean, compatible sand with the natural beach as per the code I read earlier. It just walked up on me, so I would suggest those two things.
Okay, those.
Favorable vote, hopefully.
So can we rate those in as,
Yeah,
if we're
you
gonna
can do
vote
what you want, yeah.
to have it be de minimis, we can have those as
Yeah.
conditions to the de
Recommend
minimis?
capture right now, yeah.
Okay. So are you capturing that, Eric?
I got it.
Okay. That being said, I vote that we move to consider the garage fill to SE 422924 as de minimis activity. And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
With special conditions,
With special conditions.
as we
Yes.
discussed earlier. Good night, Jeremiah.
Okay. We are on to business item 5. We are back to the airport. SE 422879, 93 Old Colony Lane. This is in regards to the wildlife management fence, de minimis activity versus request for amended orders of conditions. And we have Mr. Finn, Mr. Suvag, and Mr., I'm sorry, Garmin back.
Back again. I'm gonna distribute some hard copies of plans I know you might have received.
Thank you, Tom.
You might have received them on email, but they probably weren't something you could easily review.
5 of 8.
And while I'm doing this, I can tell you we're going to be dealing with 3 issues on the wildlife fence project, which is currently ready to go. Construction. There have been some changes as a result of, I think you might have received a letter from the engineer. Did they receive that letter?
ASG, I think we had the letter, we had given it out. Did you, Brian, or should we,
I have a copy.
in your packets, it's an ASG letter, I believe.
Yeah, there's an ASG letter that I hope you've received.
It's a one-page.
Well, if
This
you
one?
can't, if you,
I received it, yeah.
I'll read it.
Thank you.
I have a copy of it right here. Dear Ms. Hannafin, due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic causing disruption to supply chain for materials, portions of this project have been delayed for construction. This is from ASG, the engineer for the airport. 2 areas which could not be constructed at this time are the wetland mitigation area and the fence installation south of runway 6. See Plan NOI 6. Do you have 2 plans in front of you?
Yeah, we have the NO 1, and 2, and 5.
Okay.
NOI 1 and 2.
So they're on opposite sides of the pages. And it says, the 2 areas that could not be constructed at this time are the wetland mitigation area and the fence installation south of runway 6. See the attached plan NOI 6 in the eastern box turtle conservation area. The fence area could not be constructed because of restrictions on the activity in eastern box turtle overwintering habitat until after April 15, 2022. The wetland area could not be constructed because of the time of year restrictions on the plantings and seeding activity as shown on Plan Sheet NOI 8. In addition, a portion of the Bass Creek runway end fence, see Sheet NOI 5, could not be constructed under this contract due to FAA regulatory rulings. Airport Solutions Group, the project designers, has discussed this issue with RAD. It's RAD Sports, that's the contractor. And the contractor agreed to construct both of these areas after April 15, 2021. The exact dates of construction are still to be determined. So basically, what's happened is we have on NOI sheet 8.1, you have restrictions on the time of year that the plantings can take place. They can't take place after November 1st. He wasn't ready November 1st to do the wetland replication area for a variety of reasons, a lot of it due to supply chain problems. So he can't construct the wetland area right now, according to the restrictions that you have imposed on the project. Also, Natural Heritage is concerned about cutting trees in the eastern box turtle habitat area because they're in hibernation right now. And so they did not want a lot of trees and tree cutting activity to be going on right now. And the FAA decided that they did not want a fence at the end of the runway. So that is no longer part of this contract. The only determination that this commission has, there are restrictions in your order of conditions that deal with these three things, is the time of year of planting. And that has not changed because the contractor has agreed to postpone it till after April 15th. So he's in compliance with the order of conditions. So the only thing that you really need to know is that the end fence at the Bass Creek end is not going to be part of this contract anymore. That basically sums it up. And it's really informational for you, and there's really no decision required, I don't believe. Because nothing really has changed except that Bass Creek end is not going to be constructed as part of this contract.
Per the FAA.
Right.
But it's a
So
change, so it's
really,
gonna
this
do
is
that.
just informational. If the contractor had not agreed, then we'd be talking about a whole different thing. If he decided he wanted to go ahead and do the wetland, then we'd be in a whole different kettle of fish. But he's agreed, so we're all set.
So he's reducing the scope, you know?
They're reducing the scope and
A
Yeah.
positive
it's
change.
essentially just
There's
a
a positive
postponement
impact. In
until
fact,
2022.
there are two positive impacts. One is that we're not going to construct the fence at the end of Bass Creek on the Bass, in that resource area. At least at this point in time, nothing's going to happen there. And the second positive impact is for us to we have a chance now to look at the turtle habitat issue. They're going to be cutting down trees, and according to the specifications of the contract right now, he's going to take all of those trees and all that slash out of there. My inclination is to talk with a Natural Heritage and say, can't we do something with that slash and those trunks to create turtle habitat and see how they react to that? I think we can come out of this with a positive benefit, less disruption to the resource area, improve the turtle habitat, and be done with it. So this gives us a window of opportunity to talk to Natural Heritage. So I think it's positive.
Any commissioner question, comment, input?
I think it's good.
Okay.
Bill or Eric, you're,
Nothing from me.
It's all said right there.
okay.
That was easier than the last one.
Oh, wait, we haven't voted yet.
Change your mind. Cancel that.
Well,
Yeah, be careful, right?
unless anyone has a different opinion, I move that we vote to continue the changes to SE 422879 as a de minimis activity.
Second?
Susan?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
I meant easier than the last people who were sitting at this table.
I didn't think the last one you were on was that hard.
Okay. Thank you. We are now on to item B6. We have we have multiple, 6 complaints regarding cutting at 987 Ocean Street. In early October, someone went in and cleared a large portion of property that is within Riverfront. Eric and Bill made a site visit on October 18th and found large paths of vegetation, including brush and small trees, had been removed, and there were wetland flags present on the site, which appeared to be recent. A notice of violation was sent to the listed owners of the property on October 20th, directing them to cease and desist. The letter was sent by regular and certified mail. As of the time of the writing of these notes. The certified mailing has not been confirmed as delivered. Eric has spoken with the abutters more recently, who said the cutting has apparently stopped. The owners of the property were invited to this public meeting. Are they here
I believe we have one of them on Zoom potentially.
on Zoom? Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Hello, everybody. My name is Christopher Holmesy. I am related to the owners and here on their behalf.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for having me. And I meant to come in person, but unfortunately I was not able to today.
Okay. Would you like to explain to us what is taking place on the property?
Yes, absolutely. So just by way of background, during the summer, we had hired a local surveyor and engineer to perform an existing conditions plan and survey, as well as a biologist's wetlands delineation report. The difficulty they presented with us is that they can't get to the back of the property or to get through the property to perform their survey and their report. So they had asked us to help with clearing some of the brush so they can get back to the property. On one day, I believe you said the date in October, we hired a local landscaping crew to help clear some of the brush. They worked for a couple hours in the morning, and they tried clearing, just some of the invasive plants and vegetation just to the back of the property, just so that our surveyor can get back there to conduct a survey. It was a one-time item. We didn't need to clear large portions of the property. This is really just to get the survey done so that we could figure out what is allowed on the property going forward. Just for a little bit more background, my family owns the adjacent gas station to the property, and we have owned 987 this property for about 10 years now. We're hoping to rebuild the existing home on the property to see if we can get some use cases to it. So really, I'm here to kind of explain our plan. I had spoken to Riverhawk. Riverhawk was our surveyor that we engaged on this notice and discussed with him if what we did is permanent, and he had told us that most of the items that we cleared were just brush and some invasive species that will likely grow back in a few months, or come spring it'll all be filled in again. I was on the property when the landscapers were there. We were approached actually by one of the neighbors who approached us on behalf of all 6 of the abutters who live close by. They all live on Leon Street. So I don't believe these are 6 separate. While they are 6 separate complaints, I believe they did come together to file a complaint. And while we may have been getting a little bit close, I had told them that we're not interested in doing anything crazy on the property. We really just want to know what we can do, because we really love that area, and we were hoping to build a residential house, and this is my first time kind of hiring anybody to clear any work on that property. It was really just a preliminary, some clearing of brush so that we could perform the survey and see what we can do in the future.
Thank you. It was pretty significant clearing for surveying. Most surveyors and wetland scientists are pretty good bushwhackers.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's significant.
Yeah.
All right, hold on. She's got to
wait.
She's got to recognize you.
I'm sorry. Were you going to say something, Mr.
No, you can go ahead, Matt.
Okay.
Before you do that, sir, could you give us your name and address for the record? It's required. Sorry about that.
Sure, absolutely. My name is Christopher Holmesy, and my address is 2 South Street in Brookline, Massachusetts.
Okay, HOLM.
HOMSY.
Correct.
Got it.
Okay. Do we have members of the public who would like to comment on this?
First, I would like to.
Name and address.
First,
my
name
name
and
is Karen Donahue. I live at 991 Ocean Street, which abuts the property. So I'm not on Leon Street. I came down and placed a complaint on my own as well. The vegetation that was cut was very significant. It abuts my property, if not on my property. All the vegetation that's been cut down is literally right at my back side of my home, my yard, and it will not be built up in a few months whatsoever. And then on top of that, with the storm that came in a couple weeks ago when we had that big windstorm, with all the vegetation that's been cut down, the wind that has gone through has brought more down. So what I moved into that area, into that home, because of the privacy. Now there is very little privacy. I can show you pictures on my camera, seeing the small house that is still there, that they're looking obviously to rebuild. But it will never be the way it was, and definitely not in 3 months.
Couple of things I have to address with.
What's your name, sir?
Name and
Sir?
address,
Bob
please.
Edgerly,
And address, please?
21 Leon.
Got it.
That I have to address what Krista said. First and foremost, why was there not a permit required or even looked into before the cutting was done, which I'm told by both commissioners here it was not. And the other thing is, some small brush or what have you, substantial trees this big around, they were both in there, have been cut down. You can see it with the chainsaw. That's not a minor brush. That's a very poor picture. They've both been there, they'll back me up on this. You can drive a pickup truck down that path. Before this took place, from my backyard and all the abutters' backyards, you couldn't even see the gas station at all. But the only thing you could see was the top of the cell tower. Immediately after this was done, a lot of this now is in view. I can gas up at the gas station, and I'm looking at the back wall of my house, which is about 200 yards away. Now, with the fall foliage, everything disappearing, on top of that, the swath is so wide and so long that with this latest storm we had, bad timing on our parts, now the wind is able to get in there where it never has before. We have never, all the abutters, we're all sitting right here, all of us, have never had any damage at all from any storms. I've been there 11 years now. That path is so wide, now that the wind got in there due to the storm, anything that was remotely compromised, maybe a rotted stump or something, or a trunk of a tree, what have you, either it snapped the tree or ripped them right out of the ground. My neighbor sitting two people over from me literally has her yard still littered with trees that were ripped out of the ground due to the storm and thrown in the yard. This never would have happened if this clear cutting didn't take place. Residential, rebuild the home, rebuild the existing place, knock that down. Are they putting in a maybe a 2-bedroom, one bath ranch? The residential is wide open. Is this a condo complex? Is this a multi-apartment building? We're sitting here looking for answers, and I don't think we're getting any.
Well,
This is a tragedy.
Let me
And
just
in
say,
this,
we are,
all feel violated.
I understand. We are only here to discuss this cutting. Anything that is planned going forward with respect to building on this property is not going to be addressed here tonight.
But it does say in the complaint that the owner should be basically explaining exactly what they plan on doing with the property. It's right in here in the written complaint.
So, so what I was trying to say is that we were asked to clear some areas so that we could perform the survey so that we can figure out what is possible in the future to do on the property. We had no intention on clearing or disrupting any of the surrounding properties. It was really just to provide access, like we were asked, which, and the reason why we didn't get a permit is because we didn't know where we were. We were performing the survey so that we could know exactly where we were on the property, and where the wetlands started.
Who asked you to do the cutting?
Well, it wasn't a request to do the cutting, but it was we were told that the survey was prevented from being done because there was too much brush on the property.
I
So
think
we had discussed it
I've
with
heard
the
enough on
person.
Okay.
It was a one-time. It was a one-time project that took a few hours in the morning, and we were done. And we weren't trying to disrupt anybody. We weren't trying to clear wetlands secretly. We were just trying to figure out
Does
what can be
anybody
done with
else
the
have
property.
anything else to add? Does anybody have anything new to add?
Exactly. I think we have the gist of this. We have that side. We know what happened.
What's your name, sir?
May I ask a question? Is that considered?
What is your name?
My name is Thomas Hunt. I live at 11 Leon Street.
Okay.
Is that land considered wetlands? Is that land, when I bought my property 25 years ago, I was understanding that was part of the conservation land. That was non-buildable. That's what I was told 25 years ago. Now, is it buildable? There is, if you look at, excuse me, sir, if you look at the sign, now I'm seeing two signs that says Leon Street. There's only one Leon Street. If you look at the town map, now all of a sudden I'm seeing signs that says two Leon Streets. So something's going on funny somewhere. In the meantime, if you take a look at the gas station, they've done more clear cut behind the gas station too, which I believe is on lowlands. And they're storing their U-Haul vans back there now. So, and also, I see oil in the backyard that doesn't have secondary containment. So I don't think they're quite up to their OSHA regulations where they should be. We live next door to it. We don't want to bother anybody. We don't want anybody to bother us. If, we can't even get our road tarred. We've been trying for years just to get our road tarred. And now all of a sudden these people can cut down trees and do whatever they
Okay.
want.
Well, no, they can't. Okay. Is this mapped wetland?
So
we
this
have,
this is within a flood zone, which would make it land subject to coastal storm flowage under the Wetlands Protection Act and the Marshfield bylaw. We saw wetland delineation in the field of what was likely a bordering vegetated wetland, and there was cutting right up to and beyond those points. And part of this property is also likely within the 200-foot riverfront area off of Bass Creek, which runs to the rear of the property. As far as being a conservation lot, it is privately owned, as established that this is the Holmesies property, and whether or not it's buildable is a question that could only be answered with a complete permit filing.
There is abutting conservation land, I believe.
I'm gonna look at the
That's
map
what I
right
was
now, but
talking
I
about,
think,
sir.
so he's just trying to say, the gentleman here is trying to say that conservation jurisdictional boundaries on the private property. Next door, there might be a conservation land. We don't know the full scope of the cutting. We only followed like maybe a portion of it. But I would like to add, I thought I saw tire tracks, I believe. I thought I saw something impressed in to some wet areas, so they may have been through the wetlands. If the cutting happened before the surveyors went out, and then they did the wetland delineation, then their vegetation would have been pushed back, and areas that were wetlands may have been cleared. So this is a complex situation.
We've already got a cease and
Can't see a
desist, right?
surveyor needing a wide enough path you can drive a truck down.
Yeah, that's right. Can we just get this, you gotta listen to the chair.
I
You
think
gotta
it-
listen to the chair.
I think we have a cease and desist, correct?
Yeah, Eric gave a cease and desist, correct?
Okay, a cease and desist. So this appears to be an enforcement.
I agree.
Okay.
May I say one?
Yes.
Thank you. So no work has been, no further work was done since that day, and no further work has been planning to be done. And to my knowledge, there was no equipment that was driven down onto that property. It was just weed whackers and a couple chainsaws. And it was meant to be very light and just to clear, just to get the survey done, really, to figure out what can be done.
Get his record. So,
Okay, I'm gonna take one more comment, but I think we are clear here. May I have your name and address?
22 Leon Street. I was home that day. It was a Saturday morning. They showed up at 7 o'clock in the morning and didn't leave until 5 in the afternoon. And you're right, they did have trucks down there.
They were paid till 12
Sir,
o'clock.
sir,
No,
you'll have
one at a
to,
time.
Talking now. They pulled the chippers and the mulches all the way down and back there. And you could see the trees going back and forth. Myself and one of my neighbors drove around in there. We didn't know exactly how to get up in there because they hadn't made it down this way yet. They were still all the way down the back, making their way out into the street. So when he says a couple of hours, it was over 8, maybe 10 hours that they were out there. And they had the big chippers and everything else out there.
Okay,
okay,
so
very good.
we are going to issue an enforcement order. We're going to vote on this. I move that we vote to issue an enforcement order for unpermitted alteration at 987 Ocean Street. May I have a second?
Second.
Joe?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Holmesy, with all due respect, if you could please contact us, we don't want to get your number out there right now. If you could just contact our office. Our office number is 781-834-5573, and you can contact Mr. Flint or me. You can find us on the website. We'd appreciate if you do that. Enforcement is a corrective action, and we can work with you on that to get it resolved. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
All of you. Could I just quickly ask, could you explain to us the enforcement order?
Okay, so what'll happen is this, is Mr. Flint will now prepare a enforcement order with the basis of what we have and using the proven methods that we have, which make it court tight, like the one I just recently did. So we'll work together on that, and so then they'll respond to that, and it'll have very clear language. It'll tell them when to provide whatever is required. I believe the commission's gonna want a restoration plan, that is typical, and that will have a deadline. Then that will have an implementation date, and then it'll have follow-on for annual monitoring reports. There will be very good detail on this. It'll be crystal clear what happened, so that there's no, ambiguity for also the Holmesy's part, but also the neighbors. So it's an equalizing device, okay? And that's what'll happen. It'll go out, it'll be sent out as a certified mail. Mr. Holmesy will respond accordingly. We will work with him, and then we'll get the work resolved. That's it.
Will the abutters be notified?
You can come down, and this is not something where you get a butter notification. You can come to our office's public information, and we'll provide you with a copy of the documentation oriented towards this. Primarily, you'd be interested in the enforcement order. It will contain the data.
Can I just say one thing, Mayor? Since they cut down, we live in like a little buffer zone. We're about a third of a mile away from the ocean. There's the Ocean Street, there's Plymouth Street. There's Ocean Street, there's Plymouth, there's the gas, and we sit in a little hollow. And when we have the heavy winds come by, it never bothers. In 25 years, we never had any damage. Now, since he's cut down, he's opened up as an expressway.
I understand. That's
And
why
with restoration.
the
does that mean-
enforcement will require that to be restored.
That's what my question is. Does
That's
that mean
what
he
the
has to bring
enforcement
property
is
back to where it
meant
was?
to achieve. He has got to replant with appropriate plants what he has
And
taken
he
down.
He was on this lady's property.
Well, that will be determined, but the enforcement will require restoration.
That's what I was curious what restoration meant.
Yes.
Okay, thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay. Wow.
Okay. Business item B7, discussion regarding work near an isolated vegetated wetland at 9 Edward Road. Is Mrs. Moran here?
Yes.
Okay. So, there was tree damage.
Stay there if you want. You okay? Yeah.
Back in September, we had an issue, and then on October 28th, Eric, you went to the site to review tree damage after the storm. You confirmed that Ms. Moran could proceed with removing the debris.
It's fine.
And Ms. Moran, would you explain what your objection is to the September issue?
So, exactly what just happened in October is, I've been in my house 18 years. I've done I've had to do 4 claims because the trees from the wetlands have come over, tore down my power lines, searched the inside of my house. So the remaining pieces of the trees that have been sitting there, I stump grind them. I did not know I needed a permit to do it. I was just trying to clean it up, make it look a little better. There was one tree in the back that was like dead, and I have pictures on my phone of the dead tree. It has fallen, big huge pieces have fallen, hit my house. So the reason I stump grind the ones by my driveway was because I was getting this tree taken down. So they had mentioned, we could stump grind this, so I had them do that. I'm not trying to make my property bigger. I'm not just trying to save my house. So the tree work that I had done in September didn't help me in October because 4 trees came down, 2 hit my house. I need a new roof, not siding, gutters, drain pipes, vents, you know what I mean? And they asked me if I wanted those trees taken down, and I said, no, there's nothing wrong with them. But obviously, they got me. So, I didn't know I needed a permit to take down a couple trees that, you know what I mean? I wouldn't have done it. I don't have money that I can just toss around, but it was to save my house.
So we have 3 options here: de minimis, after the fact RDA, or after the fact NOI.
Well, do we really understand what this lot looks like as far as where the wetlands are?
How's Eric go, and then I'll augment.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, just to give background, we were there originally to review 12 Edward across the street, where we ended up having the after-the-fact NOI for the addition, and Bill and I noticed that there appeared to be an increase in the size of the driveway, basically cleared down from the driveway down towards the isolated vegetated wetland on the corner. It's probably a matter of, I would say, 10 to 15 feet roughly along the side of the driveway and along the back side of the house, along the yard. It's a relatively small lot. The clearing in the back appeared to be brush, and there was one large tree stump in the front. The other thing we noted at the time was a PVC drain pipe running from the center of the yard, likely discharging somewhere near the IVW, but we actually couldn't see the end of that pipe. Bill, if you want to add additional detail.
Yeah, the linear footage from the driveway to the back, I'm gonna guess it's 150, 160 feet, so it meanders around the isolated vegetated wetland. It looks like there may have been some fill also. There's definitely clearing in the 0 to 25. I don't disagree with the tree situation. They're all losing trees over there. We had the same thing when I was looking at 12 Edward. They come down naturally, and they're eventually going to come down. But I had suggested, because of the other activities in the 0 to 25, and we had the neighbor across the street, which was in an after-the-fact NOI, with 6 people complaining, or 3, and now all 3 of those isolated vegetated wetlands have come into play. This one, the one behind 12, and we got a complaint about the one on McCarthy, which is what I predicted would happen. Something needs to be done. So I think the after-the-fact NOI, absent or sans a surveyed plan, will be reasonable here. We'll get a recorded order of conditions, some in costs, potentially conservation markers that will stay with the as-built, and maybe it just naturally revegetates. I had given some suggestions. They have a large tree that's blocking water flowing down from the driveway. I suggest they notch it out, open it up so water could flow through. Now you have natural habitat, and you're allowing the water flow, and it's helping the situation over there. And then they know they'll come back for any tree work, and they'll get proactive support, or they'll call Eric like they did in this case. I didn't think that was too painful.
So can I just say something?
Yes.
There really wasn't brush in the back of the yard. There wasn't brush taken down. There was a lot of branches that had been fallen down. My neighbor had come over, they cut them, and they were just put back into the wetland. They did suggest that I need to clean that up, and that was taken care of already. I have not taken the drain pipe out. It's not big. We just put an extra French drain, and Bill explained to me like chemicals, blah, 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 could flow into the wetlands. I told him I don't use chemicals, I have a dog. But I understand it can happen, right? Flow down the street. So I told him I'd take it out.
Well, they
Unfortunately,
can fill it.
I have some health issues going on right now, and now I gotta mess with my house. So, you know, I didn't take anything out. I did put the fill in, right? Because it was just trying to make it look a little better. You know?
Okay.
But I didn't take any brush out. It was all the trees that were back there, branches.
Is there a conservation file on this property?
I don't remember that.
I don't believe there is.
What year was your house built, ma'am?
2004,
Were you the original owner?
yes.
Okay.
So there should be a conservation file.
Yeah, I
And
have a
just so
terrible
you know,
time.
it's-
Can you get into the
get in.
spreadsheet? Because it blows up when I try this. Let me try
I
it.
don't know if it helps, but it's a Habitat house. I don't know
Yeah,
if that helps.
I remember there was an NOI in this vicinity, but I think it's on the house over, Bert. So if Eric will move that thing out of the way just for a second. I think it's on that house there. I think the NOI is on that one. And I don't know how I'm not sure about the Habitat one. Don't quote me on that. 1 second, I might luck out here. All right, NOIs. 9 Edward, right?
Yeah, how could that not have?
Yeah, I don't think we need to go into it right now, but I think we should take a look at that to get an understanding of what was originally cleared and what, it's a pretty small lot.
Right, it looks like there's a little encroachment on that other property. Who owns that big one there, Eric? Joseph McCarthy, huh? That one's undevelopable, so, it's got a wetland in the middle of it. I've got a number. There's a few permits here, Bert. Let me just fire through them. 107, 70, 103.
Well, I don't see any point in continuing much longer with this. I mean, Ms. Moran obviously got the message. She came in when
Yep.
a second tree was down. As far as what needs to be done, we need to understand what the existing condition was.
Yes.
Right.
So is an after-the-fact NOI gonna help you out without the site plan?
RDA.
I don't, do we need an NOI? I mean,
The neighbor's gonna ask you why they did an NOI.
Well, this is different. There's not an addition. The other one was construction, wasn't it?
yeah, that was construction.
I think we had a similar
Don't wanna
project
give
on Careswell Street, 737, where we did an after-the-fact RDA for vegetative clearing. The end goal there, I think, was getting the conservation markers in.
Mm-hmm.
I think that might be a similar goal here, so I think that could be appropriate.
Whereas I think if you're inside the 25, which is the bylaw or the regulations, you're not supposed to go closer than that. I think the commission needs to take a different look on everything. And so when you get into that position, it gets difficult. If we're on Ridge Road, that's just as tough as this right now. Plus there's encroachment on the neighboring property. It just would resolve a lot of problems, and it would get it on the record with a clean delineation. So you now know you have a wetland delineation by a qualified wetland scientist. The commission then has the capacity to ask for conservation markers, and you can get that referenced in an order of conditions so that this kind of mystery doesn't happen anymore. Because Miss Moran may sell the house someday, and the next person who comes along, what are they going to do if you don't stop it now? They're going to go further in. They don't know.
Yeah,
I
I know.
ain't selling my house.
All right. I'm not saying. I said if, Kim.
I
You know.
don't think we have to go any further now. I mean, she wanted to speak to us. She
Yeah.
made her point.
Yeah. So just, I mean, do we have to vote on anything here?
I think so. It's a business item, right?
Yeah,
What's the discussion if a vote is needed?
yeah. Just,
Ms. Moran asked to address the commission, right? She's addressed us, we understand.
So backing it up, in September when we went to visit, Bill had suggested that she file an after-the-fact NOI for the vegetative management. At the time, we had given a 2-month deadline to come in with an after-the-fact NOI. And when I went to go speak with Ms. Moran on October 28th, she requested the opportunity to come before the commission to challenge the requirement for an after-the-fact NOI.
I mean, I guess I don't understand, like, what do you guys want me to do? You guys want me to get a wetland surveyor? You guys want me to, like, I don't have, like, all this kind of money. I didn't do anything
That's
to.
why I wanted to see the original plan and see if it has wetland lines on it, and maybe we can take it from there, whether we can do it under an
I know when they
RDA.
built the
Right, I
house,
think
like,
we should-
they put rocks, like
That's
some,
an idea.
you know, the rocks going around, so even when we built the house, they had to like custom build like the little porch, because I knew that they told me it had to be so many feet away from the wetlands, and, you know what I mean, so.
yeah, I think we need to see going back,
Yes.
and then we can make a determination, but I'm not comfortable.
No. And Habitat houses are typically built on lot that's been donated because they're challenging lots to begin with.
Right.
So there may be an inherent problem that she was not aware of.
I have an answer for Bert now. Bert, the permit was on the big one there, McCarthy. It was LO 5-2807, so there's a permit on that. And the permit number that we can give you later, I guess, 410 Wariski, single-family home. So there's some kind of delineation, but these were a lot, these would have been like, let me see if I got the date on it. 1987, that's what you're looking at. That's well
She
expired.
just said her house was built in 2004.
What I'm saying is, I'm looking
I
at-
think we need to look into this a little further.
I think we do too. My husband worked on that house.
I am in agreement, yeah.
How do we do that? We don't have any obligation to vote on this today.
No, we don't.
How do we move it?
Here, the house had a permit on it. It was Habitat, right? So single family. Let me just get this figured out real fast. So you do have it, and that was, it looks like, in 2002. So it did have a permit. Found out.
So the permit has to have drawings.
That's a little better, 2002.
Yeah.
Rick would have been drawing those back then,
Yeah, so I say we table this?
Yes.
Table this
Absolutely.
and look
And-
into what the files say.
Right, and do some research.
So Eric and I will put together a package based on that, based on what Bird's asking, the commission's asking, and then you'll make a decision by just giving us input.
Yes.
And then she'll take the appropriate action.
And then you
We
can,
can give
yeah,
her further
communicate.
feedback.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Okay, thank you for coming in.
Thanks,
We're-
Kim.
We're gonna,
Great presentation.
we're
Yeah.
gonna try to,
Just ask like just one question before I leave. So with the storm that came through, and Eric saw what I was talking about. So at the front of the street, there was like 3 or 4 trees that came down. So the town just come down with their backhoe and they just took the trees and just pushed them right back into the wetlands. Like, is someone gonna come back and address that? I mean, it's a mess, right, Eric?
So what happens is a lot of times at these stages, I'm gonna do this quickly.
Yeah.
And they get cut and they get pushed because we wanna open the roads up. And then the ancillary secondary doesn't necessarily happen immediately, So you can try with DPW, they might help out. I don't know if you have power lines over there, sometimes Eversource is in the area and they'll do things.
Yeah,
You
I'm
know.
just thinking of the flowing of the water.
Yeah, well, something also, this could be part of your mitigation. Somebody could come in, a chainsaw guy, and just lay the stuff out, and now you got mitigation in some of these areas. Like I talked about the logs. If you lay them the right way, they may make habitat, and that's a benefit.
okay,
Okay,
thank you for coming in. Okay, we are on to the hearings. We will go through continuations first. We have 12 Branch Street, a raise and rebuild, SE 422951. This is a continued hearing, and the applicant has requested a continuation to January 18th, 2022. So I move that we vote to continue this to January 18th, 2022, as per the written request of the applicant. May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
62 Marginal Road, dock system, SE 422916. They have requested a continuation to the 11/16, but now we are going to, do we have a date on that, Eric?
That was 12/7. Let me just confirm that for you.
I'll go on to the next one while we figure that out. 274 Foster Avenue, elevate a single-family home, SE 422958. The applicant's representative has requested a continuation to January 18th, 2022. I move that we vote to continue to January 18th, 2022, as per the written request of the applicant's representative. May I have a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Marginal was December 7th.
Okay, 62 Marginal, SC 422916. I move that we vote to continue to 12/7/21 as per the written request of the applicant's representative. May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
76 Carolyn Circle, Gomes Dock System, SE 422950. I move that we vote to continue to 12/21/21, public meeting as per the written request of the applicant's representative. May I have a second?
Second.
Joe?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next, 21 Oxen Drive. I'm going to open this, and then we are merely going to continue it. In compliance with the regulations of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Wetlands Protection Act, and Code of the Town of Marshfield, Chapter 294, Wetlands Protection, a public hearing will be held by the Marshfield Conservation Commission on Tuesday, November 16th, to consider the request for determination of applicability filed by Jennifer Marsubian, 21 Oxen Drive, to determine whether the work depicted on the plans is subject to the Wetlands Protection Act and whether the area and/or work depicted is subject to the jurisdiction of any municipal wetlands ordinance. So now I move that we vote to continue this to the 12/7/21 public meeting as per written agreement of the applicant. May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And lastly, we have 70 Preston Terrace, dock, SE 422954. I move that we vote to continue to 12/7/21 public meeting as per the written request of the applicant's representative. May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So then we are on 29 Quincy Ave. I will read the legal notice.
92, is it?
92, I'm sorry. I will read the legal ad. In compliance with the regulations of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Wetlands Protection Act, and Code of the Town of Marshfield, Chapter 294, Wetlands Protection, a public hearing will be held by the Marshfield Conservation Commission on Tuesday, November 16th, 2021, to consider the notice of intent filed by James and Janice O'Connor, 92 Quincy Avenue, Marshfield, Mass., for the construction of an addition and septic system repair to an existing family home within the buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland at 92 Quincy Ave, Marshfield, Mass. The hearing officer is Commissioner Karen.
Eric, can you confirm, did we get the DEP number
We
on
did get
this?
the DEP
We did,
number, yes.
okay, and taxes, fees, and abutters, are we good with all of those?
Yes, those are all confirmed.
Great. All right, and I see, is someone from PMP here? Gregory Driscoll? Yes.
Josh
You're
White.
Josh White, okay. And you're representing the applicant?
Yes.
Would you like to
I can
present?
see it.
Okay, yes.
Yeah. Can I share my screen?
Sure, give me 1 second.
Yep.
All right, go for it.
All right. All right. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Okay. So the locus property is 92 Quincy Ave. It's an existing 2-bedroom, single-family dwelling that Janice and James O'Connor are looking to put a new septic system on. It's situated between Somerville Street and Charlestown Street. Charlestown is not built, and Somerville Street is an existing driveway, essentially. It goes further back. So for the locus, number 92, there's a gravel driveway on the south side of the house, and there's the wetland line to the north, which is shown in blue here. This is the BVW line. And then we show the buffer zones from there. So the red is the 25-foot, the purple line is the 50-foot, and the orange line is the 75, and the yellow is the 100-foot buffer zone. Shown in pink is the zone AE / zone X line, which is a mapped elevation of 9.0. And then in the back of the house, you can see our proposed work. So let me just blow it up a little bit. So you can see the property lines right here. We're proposing a singular treatment tank with a pump chamber, and then the system right here, 11 feet off the back property line and 18 feet off the side property line. All of the work is out of the 50-foot buffer zone. It's about 53.8 from the BVW line. You can see in brown is our proposed erosion control line, which will encompass all of the work to be able to get equipment in from the street to the back of the property, as it is kind of narrow on this side. The proposed grading with this system that we're using, it's a drip irrigation system, so it doesn't require as much of a cover on top of the system, but it still raises the grade over the system by about just over 1.5 feet. We were able to do that with this type of system, taking reductions to groundwater. I do not believe we've got comments back from the Board of Health yet, just so everybody knows where that stands. We submitted it at the same time we submitted to Concom, but I haven't heard anything back from them. So just so everybody knows where that stands. Also, just as far as this project, on the north side of the house is an existing porch, and we are proposing it be reconstructed to its same dimensions, 5 by 22.8. And then in the back of the house, there's a set of stairs, wooden stairs, a utility room, and a 3-season porch. Those would be demoed, and basically the back of the house would be closed into a 10 by 27 proposed addition. 20.1 feet off the side property line. And just to give some perspective of what we're dealing with on this small lot. The lot is 14,000 square feet. The lot area in the buffer zone is about 12,760, which is about 91% of the lot. And our proposed disturbance in the 100-foot buffer is about 2,300 square feet, which is about 16% of the lot. And the permanent alteration in the 100-foot buffer zone is about 1,700 square feet, about 12% of the lot. And again, there's no disturbance within the 50-foot buffer zone or within the flood zone proposed for this project. As I mentioned, we've got the brown erosion control. We've also got a dewatering pump out basin, as it will definitely be needed when they excavate the hole and backfill it with sand required for this done. That's pretty much the extent of this project. So I'll leave it to you to ask any questions and answer them the best I can.
Thank you. Eric, do you have some agent comments about this?
Sure. So I think given the setbacks for all the septic system components, provided we get Board of Health approval, we can say that the presumption under 10.033 is met for protection of the interest protected under the Act and under the bylaw. The closest point of the addition is about 70 feet away and is only slightly expanding on the current footprint. Some things the commission might want to ask about would be the location of the oil tank. Right now, there's a propane tank and a above ground standing oil tank, and it just says that the contractor is going to coordinate with the owner. Maybe if the commission might want clarification on that, or maybe specify in the special conditions where those can be placed, that might be a good thing. I'm just going to steal the screen back from you for a second, Josh.
Or I can address that oil tank concern. So the proposed addition is gonna basically existing right now. There's a utility room, and like you said, the oil tank is kind of off to the side. That's all going to be encompassed in this proposed addition. That's our understanding, is that it's all going to be enclosed in this 10 by 27 addition.
That's good.
Okay. So I did a site visit. I noted that there were a couple temporary structures just right up against the wetland line. You can't see the flags there, but it's in the bush. There's just a playground structure, which doesn't seem to be in good shape, and then just the storage rack, which is also right up against the wetland line at the rear of the property. Again, these are just temporary structures, but I did note them during the site visit and wanted to bring them to the commission's attention. Aside from that, I would just note that there was a wetland on an adjacent property, and I will share the screen here to show that. So we had an old delineation for an old permit at 121 Somerville Street, and it had a Warren Harrington delineation from 2001. I went in the field and I didn't investigate this fully on this person's property, but I did see standing water and hydrophytic plant species from the road in this area. It doesn't look like it would have too big of an impact just using this GIS measurement. It looks like it brings the 100 out right around this corner of the parcel. And just to try and estimate this, it would be looking at something like adding this corner to the property within the buffer zone. But again, this is purely off field observation without any formal delineation and also measured with aerial GIS. So it's not definitive, but there is another wetland that appears to be creating a buffer on this property. I don't think it really has an impact on this project, but as this delineation is going to be approved as part of the orders of conditions, the commission might want to consider either getting a delineation on that other property and having it incorporated into the site plan, or at least stating in the special conditions that we found a undelineated wetland on the west side of the property that was not included on the site plan. So aside from that, I don't think I had any comments. I was going to suggest conservation markers at the rear of the property, maybe a couple feet up gradient of the wetland line. The yard pretty much goes back into where the wetland is delineated, so I don't think we can bump things back to the 25 without taking away a substantial amount of yard. But that's that's all I have on this one.
I visited the site with Eric, and pretty much we agreed on all the potential mitigations, and my concern was the oil tank and yours as well, which is taken care of. The other thing was that that storage rack with tires, and there's some storage bins. We don't know what's there, so if that could get moved, that's right on the wetland line. If we could get that further out, closer to the shed, as far out of the 25 as we can manage, that would be good. It's not a permanent structure, so that should be doable there, and just clean that area up. And I agree with the conservation post. Just there's no clear demarcation between managed lawn and what could be wetlands there from what are actually mapped flagged wetlands. The only other question I had is when you dewater the cesspool, where does that flow go? It's a flat, wet lot, so just want to be sure that that's not directed towards that wetland.
Yeah, so when they do that, on the third sheet of the set, we included temporary dewatering basin, which basically has the straw wattles or hay bales surrounding it, and then they can pump the water into there and let it dewater as it needs to before they remove that soil. So there is a dedicated area
Okay.
for that.
Okay, great. Do we have any commissioner comments? I'm sorry, Eric, you had your, I'm sorry, Bill, you had your.
Whenever you're ready. Josh, where did you get the NOI form?
I believe we got that from DEP's website.
Okay, do you know that we have our own forms on our own website?
We did not know that before this, but we noticed that was one of your comments from.
All right. Just so you know, commissioners, 505-106.5 Notice of Intent, WPA Form 3. Any person who proposes to do work that will alter or affect any resource area under the bylaw shall file an NOI on the form and according to the instructions provided by the commission, along with all necessary supporting documentation, under plans, appropriate fees. Now that is well written. We didn't get that. I'm going to suggest one of two things: either continue and make them give the 8 copies, or before you'll issue that they submit that they want this to be on the form provided, which includes Chapter 294 and 505. Otherwise, the town's regulations are completely undermined in the case where we get this. Now, we have people, chronic people, doing this. This is his first time, but we got to stomp it out. You know what I mean? So.
Well, that would seem to me like it's just a paperwork issue, because all
Correct.
in that we can do that, and
We can connect that by probably getting him to file the correct form and before he gets this issued. Maybe it could be like what we get with the plans, where this is actually provided by a Friday. I thought about it, I was kind of wrestling with it, and I read this just today, and I was like, wow, we actually have to have this. And this would be even bigger on a bigger project. This is pretty small potatoes.
well, that makes sense that we have the paperwork, right? He's answered all the questions that we need for the filing, and I'll leave that open to the other commissioners for comment, or any other questions or comments.
I would say that it's not a valid application without the full form. But I don't want to be a bureaucrat and say, let's continue this.
Yes, absolutely.
I would prefer to have them file the form
Yes.
as we do with some of the other documentation.
Because the substance is there, what we need, just it's meeting the regulatory requirements.
One other tiny thing. So Josh, there's no USTs. I know you said it's going to be down in this room, okay? I think we should have a special condition saying, the no UST as per the regulation, okay? Because you may do a great job designing, but then somebody changes it. And I think that would probably cover the commission's position.
Everybody satisfied?
Yeah, I don't believe it's going to be underground. I think it's just going to be kind of on a slab on the base of the addition. But we'll make sure to.
Duly noted, Josh.
Everybody.
But your best
Yeah.
design and my best regulation and Eric's best regulation can't lead to that, okay? So the language
Yeah, that
that
makes
should
sense.
go in there. When we're messing with that UST.
I have one question. You guys mentioned the wetland markers. Do you guys require PVC posts, pressure treated posts? What do you guys require?
We typically do 4x4 pressure treated posts, and we have the medallions that you can basically just nail into place here, and we can give you those for free. So if you put the posts in, you can just swing by and we can give you the medallions anytime.
Okay. Would along the tree line work? Obviously not where it cuts into the wetland line, but kind of the edge of the lawn at the wetland line / tree line. Would that work?
Let me just pull up the plan so that the commissioners can see it.
Just when we submit the revised form, we'll give you guys a new. Should we give you a new plan with the wetland markers as well?
Yes, that would be good.
And just all this a condition of approval.
Yeah, typically we require this by 12 noon on Friday, and then we
Okay.
can get you the orders of conditions. So you're saying
Sure,
along the
yeah.
tree line, where exactly?
So see wetland flag 3,
Mhm.
3 and 4. So at the tree line there, and then I guess pretty much at the wetland line there, and in the back, I'm not really sure where you want to go with them.
I think even though the tree line was there, it was relatively open there still, so I think if we say
Yeah.
maybe 5 feet up gradient of the distance between
Yeah.
8 and 7
Okay.
on this
Yeah,
plan.
that makes sense. Yep.
And then as for the wetland on the other property, does the commission want to see a delineation and a new site plan with that depicted? Or is the special condition stating that there's an undelineated wetland on the adjacent parcel sufficient?
That little patch you indicated, that was at 100 feet?
Yeah. So again, this is completely, complete estimation
Whatever's the easiest, it's,
based on
Undelineated.
aerials. What's that?
Special condition is undelineated wetland.
Okay.
it's not
Yeah,
gonna have
I
any
agree.
impact.
So that would be in D0.
All set? Is anybody here, are you finished with your comments? Everybody here? Finished? Okay. Anybody from the public here to discuss this hearing or on the Zoom call? Anybody? Okay. Seeing none, then I will make a motion that we close the hearing and approve with special conditions in addition to the special conditions that we've discussed, the revised and the NOI on the appropriate forms. Do you want to read them and
Yeah,
things
so
that we've included, make sure we've got it all?
aside from standard conditions, we'll wait to issue them until we get the revised form
Yes.
and plan. The storage rack, I heard move outside the 25.
Yes.
No underground storage tank. And a statement in D0 that there's a wetland that's undelineated on 2 parcels over on the west side.
Can I have a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Who's your second? Sue?
Great, thank you, and we'll get everything to you guys
Yeah,
by
I get it,
around
Bill.
noon on Friday.
Yeah, you
Thanks,
have
Josh.
it.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
you.
Okay. Next up, 72 Bay Avenue, SE 422754 amended. I will read the legal ad. In compliance with the regulations of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Wetlands Protection Act, and Code of the Town of Marshfield, Chapter 294, Wetlands Protection, a public hearing will be held by the Marshfield Conservation Commission on Tuesday, November 16th, 2021, to consider the request for amended orders of conditions filed by Deborah Hanlon for the expansion of the existing concrete slab to an existing single-family home within Barrier Beach, Coastal Dune, land subject to coastal storm flowage, and coastal beach at 72 Bay Avenue in Marshfield, Mass. And the hearing officer is Vice Chair O'Donnell.
Hey, Eric, amended, do we need to know anything as far as fees or?
All the administrative requirements have been confirmed.
Okay, all of them met. Can I see Mr. Savant?
Yes, Rick Savant with Stenbeck and Taylor, representing Deborah Hanlon on this. So as you know, we have a recently
constructed house was elevated up on wood piles with an open area underneath. And what we're seeing is that we're having an erosion problem out there occurring underneath the building. We're basically, I have some photos that I want to show you. I don't know if you've had a chance to get out there. I assume that maybe you guys had a chance to go out and walk around. But we're basically having an overwash problem with water coming over the wall. You can see that there's some undermining taking place. Essentially, we're seeing erosion primarily under that concrete slab that's adjacent to the wall. And really haven't had any storm events yet, so it's a little bit concerning. So we're concerned that when we do get a real storm event, we're going to get some real good erosion underneath that concrete slab and around our new piles from the overwash, which you can see in the photos. I mean, there's already rack and seaweed and everything that comes over there. It's really one of the focal points of overwash down along of the street there. So we are concerned about that. That slab is going to get undermined there and crack and collapse and potentially get underneath the seawall, which is what made the wall fail the last time. So what we're looking to do is harden some of that area. As you can see on the proposed plan, we've got about 800 square feet under the existing house that's currently pervious. It's basically sand right now. And we're proposing to harden an area of the impact zone of the wave action coming over. So it's about 15 feet extending landward of the slab that's there now. That was installed by the town behind the new seawall. So that's there, and now it's about a 2-foot drop off into the sand. So we're looking to extend that slab about 15 feet to absorb the velocity of the waves coming over. And then beyond that, we have about 25 feet of trap rock that we're proposing to dissipate the wave action and the water movement and absorb some of the water coming over and helping, slow it down before it gets out into the road. That 15 feet that we're looking to propose is kind of based on a couple things, one of which the velocity zone back in the 2016 maps used to be about in the middle of the house when we permitted the house. The VE17 line was much further back into the structure. With the new seawall and the map changes, the line is as shown on that plan there. It's a little bit further out in front of the house and through the back of the deck, but real life conditions, I think it's more about where the old velocity zone used to be. So it's about 15 feet back. So that's why the placement is there, showing that. I think it's more representative of what's happening out there during a storm with the impact zone. That's essentially what we're hoping to do. We're really just looking to cure a problem before we really have a problem. You can see there's some undermining taking place on the slab already, up against the seawall and to the north. So we're just trying to nip it in the bud here and get some more area. The previous house was obviously sat on the ground, and essentially all of that area behind the seawall was hardened. The original house was built in the 1880s, and it had concrete all around it. I know we don't like to harden everything. I know that goes against what the commission's looking to do, but we're kind of in a situation that we need to solidify before it gets washed out again. So that's what we're hoping to do. I'll do my best to answer your questions.
Okay. Eric or Bill, comments?
Yeah, so just background, like Rick said, this was issued back in 2019 for a raise and rebuild during the June 15th meeting. Ms. Hanlon came before the commission to discuss putting in the concrete slab under the house. At the time, the commission noted that the subsurface of the house had been debated during the NOI process and conditioned to remain pervious, and that if any review were to happen, that it would need to be prepared by an engineer. And so here we are with this amended request. I visited the site on the 5th and noted that the new house has been constructed. As Rick mentioned, underneath it's mostly sand and cobble where there's no concrete slab currently. One thing I would note was that in the site plan on the initial NOI, the final approved plan had had 1,997 square feet of existing impervious coverage with a decrease to 1,722 square feet of impervious coverage under the proposed conditions that were approved by the commission. On this current plan, I can see that we currently have 2,100 square feet, which is higher than the original existing conditions impervious table. So we're already over what had been proposed in terms of impervious coverage, and now we're talking about adding an additional 239 square feet of impervious and 502 of pervious, I guess, for the trap rock. You know, I would just go back to the presentation that we heard from CZM regarding, you know, impervious surfaces in these flood zones. We have a VE and an AO flood zone on this property, and it's also within coastal dune. And we talked about even, you know, pervious surfaces, if they're hardened, being an issue because they can become projectiles during, you know, high velocity storm events. So, you know, and the commission could also consider the Chapter 5 regulations on hardened surfaces, which state that in a property on an AO or a VE flood zone, between decking and walkways and patios and impervious surfaces, there's not supposed to be more than 500 square feet, and we're already surpassing that in this property. So I think there's some questions as to whether this can be allowed, particularly the concrete portion. If any hardened surface is to be put in, the commission could consider requiring pervious instead of concrete. But just to, you know, reiterate that we had that presentation by CZM really emphasizing the importance of having erodible surfaces beneath these properties to mitigate flood damage when serious storm events do occur.
Thank you, Eric. Did you see the minutes or watch the presentation when we had the business item when we discussed it, Rick?
I saw the minutes.
Okay.
I don't remember exactly, but I definitely read through the minutes. I think Eric forwarded to me, or maybe the homeowner did, but I did.
I mean, I think our feedback was, you know, we wouldn't look favorably on more concrete slabs. It's already basically, other than beyond the seawall, the whole lot is impervious, but by the new calculations. I think, not to speak for you, answer for yourself, but I believe it's the difference in the new regs and the old regs as far as how we determined impervious. You know, because we used to look at the area under the house.
Right.
But now, you know, we take the roof of the house as being impervious.
Yeah, that impervious coverage table is a little misleading. I'm maybe doing a great job on that, but it's basically double dipping on, we're counting the roof and all the concrete, and we're counting additional area under the house. So that's why the number is bigger than the 1997 that Eric spoke about. There's actually only 1,997 square feet of land behind the seawall. So we're only be able to cover 2,104 because the roof's already covering it, and there's the slab area that the town poured adjacent to the wall is what's putting it over what we had proposed initially. It's a nice slab, but it's bigger than what we had before.
It's bigger than what was there before?
It's bigger than what we had proposed was going to be there, that we got approval for, the 1997. It extends under the deck. You can see the line where the edge of the town is that expansion joint. It's right at the 16-foot dimension on the house. That's where the slab ends. So we weren't proposing on the proposed plan. It didn't go back that far. It was just around the perimeter of the house. So there was, that additional area wasn't in that approval calculation. So we are over what is shown, but it wasn't something that we constructed, let's say.
Understood.
Yeah. And I know we're not supposed to harden stuff. If you see what's going on out there,
yeah,
any sand is it's just going to get.
We had this
right
discussion before, and then the presentation by Coastal Management reinforced that even more.
Yep.
I feel the trap rock is somewhat of a compromise. You know, in a major storm, that's not gonna stay in place, but I think it would stop the kind of erosion that you've seen, you know, recently. You know, you say even with the small storms, we've already seen some. I'd like to open it up to the other commissioners.
Since that house has been there, we've seen some pretty good storms. You can't walk down that Pearl Street opening in some of those storms, and it was rushing pretty good underneath your house. And one of the things I think is our obligation is to worry about the sheet flow across Bay Ave. And I don't see this proposal doing anything except to further that sheet flow.
Yeah.
And I don't think in good conscience we can accept that. It's actually the applicant's responsibility to show why the slab is an improvement. And I don't think that's been done.
Did you go to the property?
I lived there.
Oh, I know you have.
Let
I
me,
know you have.
excuse me, ma'am, you get your chance, but I want to let the commissioners finish talking first, and then we'll
Very
open it
well.
up to you. Other commissioners?
Yeah, I agree with Joe. Coastal Zone Management, when they made that presentation, they had very, very compelling evidence for why this is ultimately going to be counterproductive, if not to this property, to the properties around it. And we have to take that into account.
I feel the same way, and I've visited the property as well, and you can see that it would just channel the water, particularly with the concrete on the sides. And I know that, and they say it should be erodible surface, which means things are gonna flow and then you have to put them back. I mean, you see that all up and down Central Ave with Hummerock after every storm. All those homes have the large cobble and the stones, and they do come out on the, and I'm sure it's a nuisance to them, but then they push it back. So it's sort of mimicking what nature intended.
That's what the dune is
It's
supposed to
work,
do.
that's the problem.
Yeah,
but-
the trap rock does absorb some of the energy.
Right. It also has a tendency to lock, it's got sharp edges, so when it gets pushed by maybe moderate waves, it'll lock together. Water can pass through, it keeps the fines in place. It's just those monster storms that might move it.
So you spoke about the slab, Joe. What about the trap rock? Is that,
The trap rock will mitigate some. There's a house down the street that's put trap rock in their yard, and it stayed there. It's been there for a bunch of years. He's actually got grass growing around it now.
How big is the trap rock? I'm not familiar with that.
6 inches, is that
6
correct?
inch plus, I mean, it's just a,
It's
as a
a-
designated, but it's football stuff,
Yep.
you know, and larger.
So the one down the street he actually put in, 3/0, he said? I don't remember the number, but they were like 3-foot stones. They were pretty good size. He brought them in.
Yeah, I don't remember which one we're talking about, Joe, for sure.
Yeah,
That's the one I worked
it's
on.
down by the Avon Street.
Okay.
But
We haven't seen that spec before. Are there any limits on that? You get to a point where it could become armory, you know, if it's too big.
Well, it's 500 square feet, you know,
Yeah.
Eric pointed that out in his write-up, so that's it. You know what I
I'm
mean?
talking about the size of the trap rock.
size of the rock.
Eh,
We
yeah.
don't have,
We
I don't know the answer to that
had
one.
mused with the former builder, Joe and I, about a combination. I always believe that there's some level of that, but I'm not gonna sit here and say, I'm gonna go to means and methods and design something. We don't do that. We just suggest it. And this was months ago in the cold, so it would've been February or something, this year.
well, like Susan said, you're basically trying to mimic
Nature,
Be natural.
correct, which is what you were also saying is, and the commission allowed Marathas at 50 Ocean to put down trap rock. He's in a pretty, he had a seawall problem over there too. So this area is a wave attenuation area, they get hammered. But it mitigates, it moves around. And there is going to be beach renourishment. If they can get one person to sign an easement, then that whole area is going to pick up beach renourishment. Well, I shouldn't say that. A vast majority of that area is going to. And that will mitigate some of this. So that's a rescue that's coming. They're already talking to me about the NOI.
At this point, I'd like to open it up to the public, or actually, ma'am, are you the owner? Do you want to comment first?
Deborah Hanlon.
Yeah.
I just wondered if you've been down, all have been down to see. We haven't had any very bad storms. We've had a lot of water coming over, but nothing like, and we've had some awful, I mean, I've got terrible erosion underneath. And anything that's in that line of fire is coming up. This gentleman lives across the street and he gets,
I was there Monday. I saw what you have there.
and you saw all the rocks out in the road.
Yep.
All I want to do is have that cement or concrete or hardened surface take the slam of the wave, disperse it evenly, then go into a drainage area. That, I think, is very sensible. But to have it all rock, where that wave hits, no matter what's there, it's coming up. It's coming up. I've been there 30 years and I've seen it. I actually had concrete for 30 years. But now I'm seeing in one season, without very bad storms, everything is out in the road. And it's very difficult. I mean, and I'm just afraid of my concrete that is there around. It's all undermined already.
I understand and I don't dispute what you're saying, but the rules and the direction things are headed is that it needs to be.
But we let things get ruined, undermined. The wall is going to be affected.
The reason you have a pile foundation is that's supposed to be able to take a high degree of undermining. You know, I'm not an engineer. I can't explain.
I know Rick is.
Well.
And he just drew up a plan that looks pretty safe to me.
Well, thank you for your comments. Sir?
Paul Flavor, 59 Bay Ave. Can I just give you guys some pictures? This is
We've seen all this stuff a million times, but feel free.
Well, I know, but I live there, so I see it even more than a million times. And you guys are talking about permeable material. It doesn't act that way. It's not absorbing water. Underneath their house, closest to the seawall, fills with water. And it is promoting the flow of water. I disagree with Mr. Ring. It's making it worse.
It's not
because
so
it's
much
water hitting water.
It's not so much the permeability at this point. It's ability to absorb the energy when those waves are breaking over. To have this cobble and rock move a little bit and absorb some of that energy, so it's not shooting right down the roads behind.
And I know you don't live down there. I'm one of the few people that stays through all the storms. That's not gonna work, Bill. Right. It's not gonna work. It's just not gonna work. And if you look at the last picture, that's Miss Hanlon's water shutoff near Bay Ave. So that's the opposite end of her property from the seawall. Look what's happening to that concrete slab. That's what's gonna happen to the slab that was just put in. And the reason that slab had to be put in, because I not only live at 59, my brother owns next door to Miss Hanlon, and the porch collapsed because the concrete slab undermined and it dropped and took the foundation of the house with it. The problem here is it's undermining. It's already dropped about 2 feet, closest to the seawall. Towards the street, it isn't eroded. What we need is something to absorb the impact of the ocean and then to run towards a catch basin, which would be the area which would be all rock. I live across the street. Dave Russell lives across the street. We're here in support of this. Why? Because it makes the neighborhood a mess. Every property that has concrete is fine after a storm. All those properties, that's what it looks like, the permeable material underneath. If there's an area where the waves will hit, now that Mrs. Hanlon's house has been raised up, what used to happen is the waves would hit her house, and that would stop the flow. Now she's up. The waves are crashing underneath her house and hitting right underneath where it's undermining. If that could be concrete so that it absorbs the impact and then flows into the type of riprap, that's my term, it will act as a catch basin, I think, the shaded blue area. And I think it's gonna slow down the flow. If that entire area fills with water like a pond, and then the waves come over, I stand there watching it. It is flying. It's like a tide. It's like an oncoming tide. What's needed is something needs to absorb that ocean, and then it needs to go to what would be a catch basin. And I think that that's what they're proposing, because I know what's there now is gonna be a constant nightmare of Bay Ave being covered with cobbled debris and sand and rocks, and the town has to come and clean it up, and Miss Hamlin has to put it back underneath the house, and it's gonna happen again.
Actually, coastal zone management, that's what they advocate. They want to see it migrate.
Want to
That's,
see it in the street?
that's what we heard.
And it's not a coastal dune, it's not that type. It's not Wrexham Beach.
I
It's not
specifically
that.
asked this question because I was interested in what their answer would be. And Bert's right, that's the answer that they gave. They want to see that.
They want to see what exactly?
They want to see the cobble roll and migrate.
And move into the street and
Because
then
it
we put it
absorbs,
back every year?
it absorbs the energy for the water,
Oh, God.
slowing it down.
It doesn't,
That's
it doesn't, Joe.
ridiculous. This is common sense.
The larger stone
This
does.
isn't rocket science.
Little stone does not. 'cause
Well, actually, it does.
It's too fast.
It dissipates it because what happens is there's a thing called interstitial space, and when it hits the hard part of the rock, whatever size it is, it starts to destroy the energy. And that's kind of what happens. Now, the outcomes may be not to our liking, but back before we had all the pavement and everything like that, this stuff moved around. And they're basically advocating that you have to meet the performance standards, that the sediment has to be able to migrate and the water has to be able to flow also. What's happening, and to Joe's point, it's sheeting, and your neighbors on the opposite side, you guys are all on the even, on the odds, right? They're picking up the wave energy, and we've already had people
No,
coming
we're
up.
on the odds. I'm across the street.
So I mixed it up, sorry.
Oh.
Forgive me, Joe, Mr. Flavin. So long story short, it's getting to the opposite side of the street, and it's having secondary impacts on them, and that's part of this too. There's a collective component.
No, it's
you know?
worse now. I've been there
There's
for
a
30
solution.
years.
There's a
It's worse now.
solution. There's got to be a solution somewhere to achieve the performance standards and have the house more secure and have the sediment maybe less leaving. And it's the fines that you're talking about, primarily the little stuff, you know? So that's the stuff that will migrate the most.
If I could,
Sir?
Dave Russell, live at 77 Bay Ave, right across the street from Deb. Been there for 22 years. When Deb's house was on the ground floor on the slab and the ocean water would come over, the velocity and quantity of water that would come across would just come across. At the end of a storm, the water would dissipate and it was gone. Last winter was the first winter Deb's house was raised up on the pilings. Every spring when I clean up my driveway, I just have casual street broom and I take 1 or 2 shovelfuls and just get rid of that sand. This past spring, which was the first year after the house was raised, I had 5 full wheelbarrows of sand and stone, which all came from under her house, because that area does not absorb anything, okay? It doesn't stop the flow of anything, and it just comes out onto the street. So it's an inconvenience for me, but then the town has to come down with a backhoe. They don't plow snow off of our street, they plow rocks off of our street. And if you look at where they have to plow rocks off the street, if you go down all the even number houses, it's only the ones that are raised that have loose sediment under the house. And that's where all the rocks come on, okay? Fred and Mary Ellen's house, which I don't know what their number is, they've got to be
There's pictures, you can see in the pictures. I gave.
78 or 80 or something like that. He spent a fortune putting rocks under there, good-sized rocks. They're out on the street, and they hit the car across the street. They hit the neighbors on the even side. I got Deb's mess, I put it back under her house, because I knew she wanted it back.
Trying.
So I'm in support of this plan because, now I'm not an engineer either, but you know, just looking at where the waves hit and having area that extending the slab that the town put in, which is the crash zone where the overage comes, and then having some type of large rock on the other side to absorb it and slow it down, I think it seems to make all the sense in the world from a hydrodynamic standpoint. Let it hit somewhere where it's not going to undermine and pull out from the concrete. Because I've seen, I was at Paul's sister-in-law's house. I watched that slab go down day by day, and then the house collapsed. And that's what happens when the water hits there.
Thank you for your comments.
I just have one more question. If I
Okay.
did the large rock in that full bottom, you don't feel that the cement around that will be undermined, continue to undermine, that water won't get under. Now, that's a brand-new pad that the town put in that is helpful to the wall. I feel like if that water hits that rock, that is going right under that pad. I mean, that is common sense. If there was concrete where that wave hits, that will disperse the water into the rest of the rock. If I leave that open against where the town put in the cement, that's definitely getting undermined.
You can
I don't
see-
know what, I don't know what, I don't even understand why that's not, you know, being thought about here. It's not just that, you know, I've always said from the beginning, I don't wanna put concrete because I wanna put a patio set. I wanna save my new pad there. It's all undermined now,
At the new wall.
in the new wall.
You can
And I
see it
think if
undermining.
there's, it's
going
very
down.
undermined,
Yeah. I understand CZM is right, I get it.
yeah.
Now we have a pad there that was put there, it's gonna get undermined and it's gonna collapse.
Well, like
can
you
see
said,
it's getting
Sure,
undermined
it's
already.
going to.
it
There's no
is,
question that it's,
Yeah.
I mean,
you
they-
can already stick your arm in the spot.
exactly.
It's already hollow, it's gonna continue to suck that out of there and it's gonna get below the seawall.
And
Something
rocks are
needs to
gonna
be
let
done.
that water
At
get in
least
there.
that needs to be sealed off with something. I don't know what the town, I know the town, you know, I'm not putting any emphasis on what they did. All the new wall that they put in has slab behind it, just like on a Brent Rock, I mean, it's there. If we just leave it, it's going to get undermined and collapse. I have no doubt about it.
Absolutely.
If you get that trap rock, isn't that gonna catch some of the
It's gonna help.
fines and let that
It's gonna
start to
help.
fill
It's
back
still
in?
gonna-
But water's
There's
still
already a
gonna get
problem
under
there.
there.
It will get under there. Something has to be done to seal that off.
Yeah,
Whether it's some concrete, this is proposed through the old velocity zone, which is the 15 feet, this is where we started for the discussion. If we just rock, it's still gonna, in my opinion, it's still gonna undermine that if we don't do something about the situation that's there. Something has to be done to fix that, or it's gonna collapse, and it's gonna get under the seawall.
it's like a washing machine. When the water hits it, it goes under all three sides of the cement. And it's going under, coming back out, just like this.
Okay, I think we've got some other people that may wanna make comments. Is there anybody, online that wants to talk? Or possibly not?
Just one thing, I think the commission and that business session asked for an engineering approach. You know, God bless Rick, he's definitely a land surveyor, but I think you want an engineering component of it, you know? And like we had at 274 Foster, there's a possibility of a third party required also, because this debate's going on all over the place, you know? Do I need to be on piles? Do I need, how do I deal with too much
Our
concrete?
answers are based on the best practices that we've been exposed to and that's been explained to us, so.
I
I
get
think
it.
I speak for the
understand.
commission, that's where we're at.
Right. I know it's a tough situation, there's no clear answers, we don't know how to stop the sea from swallowing up stuff. Unfortunately, we ruined the natural system there 100 years ago, and now we're out there. We're trying to hold it together. So it's tricky. But I do see that there is a problem there. Something has to be done, or we're gonna see a big sinkhole right there behind that wall, the next big storm for sure. Maybe it's not the 15 feet that we're showing, but something has to be sealed up around there, or it's gonna wash it out for sure.
Well, I think the slab is really out of the question.
Yep.
I propose, would you like to continue and come back with something else, or?
Yeah, I would. I think I'd like to work with Rod maybe and look at something that needs to be done around there to stop, try and do something. I think that's a good
I mean, we're
approach.
willing to listen, I understand the
I
issues,
did try
but
before we made the submittal. Rod was out for a little while, and it was right there on the submittal time. I wasn't able to meet with him. So I would like that opportunity to do that.
Okay, other commissioners agree with that?
Absolutely.
If it can't be attenuated on the ocean side, it's gotta be directed on the land side somehow.
The only thing is too, these storms are gonna start getting worse and worse. And now we have to do more research. I'm not gonna be able to, I don't know what I'm gonna be able to do when it gets,
We have another March 18,
exactly,
2018.
exactly. I
Well,
did what you asked me to do last storm. I got my engineer, he wrote up his thing. Now I have to
And
go
we have to
further?
have an answer that's based on, like I said, the best practices, and even Rick will tell you, this is not what,
He thought it was
not what's
great,
recommended.
he threw it out.
So I'd like to make a motion to
Starting
continue the
point.
hearing and get more engineering feedback or a modified,
It seems like that's what we need to do.
if I get a second to, when do you want to continue to?
We were out till what, December something, Eric? is
Be
that
the
right?
7th or the December 7th or December 21st.
We do have.
Is it too late for someone to jump in here?
1 second, sir, 1 second. There's January and February also.
We're not closed yet, so I will take one more
I think it's Joe
comment.
Pasovich, so we'll give him some time.
Yeah, Joe Pasevich,
Wait.
25 Wilson Road. I have a question. This section of Bay Ave, is this a section that involves seawall that's slated to be replaced?
No, just been
It
replaced.
has been replaced.
It has been replaced, brand new.
And the second thing is, that there's a slab or like a sidewalk or something that was put on the ground behind the wall?
Yes,
Is
there's
that true?
a 14-foot concrete slab behind the wall.
Whose idea was that? Was that just part of the specs, or did the owner request it?
No.
It was there before,
It
and
was
the town
replacement of what was
replaced
there
it.
before.
So
The town replaced it when they rebuilt the wall.
Thank you.
So Rick,
uh,
which date were you saying?
Date,
I'd like to just get it as soon as we can, and if I can't get the answers I need, I'll continue it in a timely fashion, but let's get on the next available hearing.
December 7th.
Yep.
okay, I made a motion to continue to December, what day was it, Eric?
7th.
7th, Pearl Harbor Day?
I offered a second.
Joe seconded.
Second, Joe, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.
Thanks for your time,
Can
Brian.
I make a constructive suggestion? I've been here the last 3 times I've come before the Concom. I've waited for 2.5 hours while you guys have talked. The people that go up first are the people that are violating things, cutting things down, enforcement orders, not complying with things that you told them to do. Is there a reason they don't go last? And the people who have business that's scheduled don't go first?
Bert, I can help you if you want, or the chair, I can help out.
It's a fair point. Go ahead, Bill.
So this is my recollection, correct me if I'm wrong. What happened was, you were right, had too many on the front, so we pushed them in the back end, and then they went away. We didn't have a problem because we squashed a whole bunch of that. So it's only recently that we've had a few of these. So you saw, I think, a Diagon episode or something like that, and then you just saw an Edward episode here. So you just kind of had a bad visit, so that's what it is. We've
I
actually
can see
moved.
that, but the bad folks ought to go last.
Well, we tried our hardest to get the de minimis activity
I've asked
first.
the same question, like,
Yeah.
why
Yeah,
don't?
I
why-
think it's a fair comment.
We
Yeah.
structure it more towards
Then the engineers
quick
have to stay
business
all
if we
night.
can
Yeah.
to run in. So
It's
you're
always-
right, we do that.
You might need to
Yeah. You should be able to
reconsider.
go early.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Thanks, Rick.
Thanks,
Good
Rick.
night.
Good night.
Okay, on to
Bringing us back like this.
COCs. SE 420834, Goggin, 807 Union Street. Oh, this is the house, okay. The commission subsequently orders of conditions at this property in 2005 for a dock system on what is now conservation land. The file included a site plan from 1994 of the completed paving from the previous permit. The homeowner is currently in the process of closing a sale and realized the old permit was still open. Given that Conservation has a plot plan depicting the completed work from SE 420834, and that Conservation subsequently approved a COC for a more recent permit, the homeowner's representative has requested that the requirement for an as-built plan and a letter from an RPE PLS be waived. So I move that we vote to waive the requirement for an as-built site plan and letter from an RPE PLS and issue a complete COC for SE 420834.
May I offer a suggestion?
Yes.
We had a debate about, or some conversation about conservation restrictions, and this property is one of the unique private properties that has a conservation restriction on it. And as you know, some of you have been here for a while, the back portion was purchased by the town, which also has a conservation restriction, through the trustees of reservations. I would like to suggest that we add, or the commission add, with ongoing conditions, as a note referencing that conservation restriction, so it lives in here, so there's no more confusion, because we actually had somebody come in and ask about this property, and they want to know if they could put a helicopter pad on it. So I think the commission has a golden opportunity right now to get that in, and also there's a separate document called the assignment. And I have the book and page, I'll read them into the record if you want, and then we'll just have that. Is that okay? Or is that wasteful? It's purposeful. I'll read it. May I read it in the record? Is that okay?
Yes.
So, with ongoing conditions, conservation restriction note, see the conservation restriction details at book 5126, page 015, can't read my handwriting, and see assignment, book 13518, page 322, and that will seal that, and this will be forever protected because people will see it, and it won't separate it, and then potentially, and we also have it in our records.
Great. Thank you. Thank
Sorry
you.
about that, it slipped on me.
Okay. So, I move that we vote to waive the requirement for the as-built site plan and additionally include the
Chris will get it.
conditions raised by Administrator Grafton. May I have a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. SE 422784, Marshfield Airport, 93 Old Colony Road. Would you like to,
Back again.
you're the
I don't know where I fit.
last
I was
man
good guy,
standing.
Bad guy.
I
I
know.
come up first, so I'm a
Hey,
bad
that
guy.
language I was reading was
You're
yours.
good
man.
and bad, yeah.
The language you were reading is mine?
Yeah, I took it
doubt
right out of your playbook. I
doubt
gave it, I gave it to you and you fixed it.
I doubt it. Not my language.
Well, not the latest one, but prior from the regs.
This issue that we're talking about now, I'm asking the commission for a certificate of compliance for the aviation gas storage tanks that we earlier talked about adding the diesel fuel tank into that containment area. There was never been a certificate of compliance issued to the town. This is for to the Airport Commission. Because around the end of 2019 and early 2020, they asked for a certificate of compliance, and Bill had some questions about material that he wanted to see submitted to the commission. There was a lot of miscommunication, I believe, that occurred between the engineer and the commission. Ultimately, Bill asked me, when you retain my services, to look into this issue, and he gave me a list of things that he wanted to look into. I looked into all of them in the chair, and Bill and I had a meeting about 6 or 8 weeks ago where I went through all of the listed things that Bill wanted to have done. And as a result of that review, the chair wrote a letter requesting that the engineer do 3 things, or send in 3 items, or satisfy 3 items. And this is the items were a complete set of as-built record drawings for the above project, and as requested by Mr. Grafton in his email to you dated April 20th, 2020, He wanted a positive statement that the as-built and record drawings that were submitted were responsive to the comments made during the review by the Marshfield Department of Public Works. So the engineer included that in his response. And then finally, Bill wanted to see a lot of, it was unclear, the reporting that was requested, but we did find out what reports they were required to submit to EPA and to DEP, and also an updated stormwater prevention, pollution prevention plan, and an SPCC. We have received everything. This happens to be the most updated stormwater pollution prevention plan, and if you'd like to take the time to go through it sometime, I'd be happy to give you a copy. However, that's gonna, this is gonna come up later because this has a great deal to do with this larger project that's coming down the road toward us from the airport in terms of repaving and taxiways, et cetera. So this is gonna be an important document. But they have complied, in essence, with all of the requests that the chair made. And therefore, I'm recommending that the commission issue a certificate of compliance for the project and get it off the table. Get it behind us and so.
Move on to what's coming next.
Well, yeah. What's coming next is obviously the wildlife fence and security fence, and then we have the larger project coming down the road, and the permitting will start this winter. And that's going to be a much more significant project. But it's probably, a lot of it's going to be on existing paved areas. So it's not, it's, stormwater runoff is what it's going to deal with, pretty much.
So I kind of want to just thank Bill for stepping in. You know, I got him, you know, that was going on. We hired Eric and, you know, got Bill on board and everything. That's created a better level of presence in both areas. Okay, Eric on his side and then Bill Finn on the airport. So what we have is a stronger presence in there. I've noticed that the new staff has been very, very responsive. Deliverables are coming through. Bill is constantly hitting me with updates. This is great news. We have a strong presence over there. Bill was also involved with the early vegetative management, which was a new thing back in, I think, the 80s or the 90s, whatever it was. Don't count me right now because I can't pull that kind of data out of my head right now, but he has that kind of level of experience. So it's just really fortunate for Marshfield to have this. And my additional information request was sort of a blanket or a net. And some of them might have been a little bit much, but I was just asking for answers that I thought were important. So we whittled this down. The chair requested the specifics after we had our meeting, and they delivered it. And that satisfies everything. Otherwise, I'd be complaining right now.
Yes, Mr. Finn is doing an outstanding job for us. So thank you, Bill.
I'll take all the compliments I can get.
So just vote, right?
Pardon me?
Vote and let you go home.
So, I move that.
Is it possible to ask a question?
Mr. Pasevich.
Yes. Is it okay to ask a question?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, Joe Pasevich, Wilson Road. I heard Mr. Finn say that stormwater prevention documentation and an updated SPCC is, he said he was going to offer it for you to look at. Why isn't that part of compliance, to have all that on file?
It is on file, excuse me. I have a paper copy, Mr. Pasevich, but it is on file with the commission.
I can attest to that, Joe. I am the one who was being the hardball on this, okay? I asked for these documents. They got written into the orders of conditions, and anything that didn't get delivered went into my additional information request. Mr. Finn engaged, and he got the documents delivered, and progressively we have everything we need. They came into compliance when the team of myself and Mr. Finn were involved, so we got that. And if you want to come down and see the record, we have it, and you're welcome to look at it.
So then the de minimis activity regarding diesel above ground storage
All right.
doesn't have an impact on the original order? And on the fulfillment of the
It's a
COC?
separate, it's been determined to be a separate activity for three reasons. One, it's a diesel fuel versus the aviation fuel. It was reducing down hand pumping. Mr. Finn detailed that. It's a different funding source. It's a different applicant. It is close by, but it's also in a previously disturbed environment, and it's beyond the 50-foot setback. If this fuel was more of an issue than more volatile, say, we'll use just that word, than the aviation fuel, then maybe it would be an NOI. But it's not. It's diesel fuel, which is a lower grade hydrocarbon, which you know because of your environmental consulting experience. So that's my answer to you on that.
Well, I don't see how you can compare the constituents of diesel fuel and aviation gas and say that it represents less of a threat. I mean, someone would have to try to prove that it represents less of a threat to the environment. And actually, it may be, although it may contain fewer solubles, that's possible. It is still persistent, and it still can have a tremendous adverse impact. And you should spare no effort at all to make sure that there's all types of SPCC measures in place for something like that.
We have it, I think.
I believe that is being covered.
Yeah, and Joe, just see, I have experience with these kind of things from the West, and aviation fuel is more volatile and more treated with chemicals. So it's, of the two, it's more of something we would concern ourselves with. Fire department too, et cetera, they also keep an eye on this. They're going through their permitting. They'll be turning in the permits. You'll be able to see them in the record, Joe.
Yeah, well, I disagree that it represents less of a threat to the environment, whereas you say you would give an NOI for aviation gas, but you wouldn't give one for diesel fuel. I don't know what you're really basing that on. Is there some literature?
Excuse me, I think we are off topic here.
Okay,
I respect your questions and your concerns, but we answered the question. This is in the record. It is available for you to see. And we finished the storage tank earlier in the evening, so.
Yeah, I know, that was like top of the agenda, and I only caught the tail end of that. I had some technical problems, sorry about that, but.
Well, you can go back and review.
As to Bill's comment about having a stronger hand there on these issues at the airport, that certainly sounds great. But I hope that it carries on through, because as we know, the vegetation management plan has been modified, and that represents a change in conditions that wasn't brought to the public's attention. The vegetation management program that we all not really agreed upon, but we all had a chance to go over at the time of the expansion project, specified certain ways of managing vegetation, and since then it's been edited and modified, and that is extremely disappointing. And that's all my comments for now. I know I'm getting further afield here.
Yeah, I think we're getting off topic. So
right.
We will. There will be
words.
time to review the management in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe, for the comments.
All right.
So, a certificate, I recommend that the commission issue a certificate of compliance for the aviation fuel tanks.
I move that we vote to issue a complete COC with ongoing conditions for SE 422784.
Shall I read them just because?
Yes, please read them.
On behalf of the chair, I'll read the ongoing conditions, which I vetted with Mr. Finn here. Provide copies of any revisions to the SWPP and SPCC that reference the two proposed above-ground storage tanks to the Conservation Administrator. Maintain a current copy of the SWPP and SPCC plan on site at all times for reference. Remove the underground storage tanks in compliance with all applicable regulations, including the Marshfield Conservation Commission Order of Conditions. provide SWPP, SPCC, or equivalent reports to the Marshfield Conservation Commission until 2022. So they've got some reporting that they need to provide to us, and that's it. Just a little bit more.
Okay. Did I get a second on that?
I will second it.
Second?
Joe, second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you, Mr. Finn.
You're welcome, man.
And last, we have SE 422953, 111 Canal Street. I move that we vote to issue a complete COC for SE 422953 with ongoing conditions, that the conservation markers remain in perpetuity, and that activity down gradient of them is prohibited.
Can I make an adjustment there? Real brief. We talked about the as-built. You and I talked about the as-built.
Yes.
I'd like to put that in there if it's okay. I'd like to
Yes.
read that in. Is that okay?
Please do.
All right. So after conservation markers as depicted on the as-built plan dated 7/22/2021, prepared by Stembeck and Taylor, signed and stamped by Douglas L. Arebeg, PLS. And then all that in perpetuity carries from there.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Second was who?
Joe?
Joe?
Joe Ring. Excellent.
I move that we close the Marshfield Conservation Commission meeting of November 16th, 2021. All in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We don't have to second.
I don't know. They
We don't
It's
know.
okay. You seconded that.
We're not going to argue on
I
who
got you.
seconded that one.
We don't care.
why-
That's a
why
good
I
one,
was
second,
second for
yeah.
that.
Be all three of us.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Bill.
Thanks,
You're
Bill.
welcome.
Sorry you
Welcome.
had to,
No, no.